My House of Horrors chapter 981 to 1000. Every time he wakes up, it's 11:56 p.m. When I looked at the clock earlier, it was the same time. Chen Ge looked at the wall again, and the time on the clock had changed to 11:57 p.m. A recurring nightmare, that fits the theme of the scenario. The way to clear the scenario perfectly should be to break the cycle. Chen Ge placed the fruit platter on the coffee table to the side and placed the mannequin's body on the table. The first change to this scenario will happen in 3 minutes. You'd better go and find the rest of the mannequin's body. We're a team. Can you please be more polite with us? One of the girls wanted to say something, but she was stopped by the man with the glasses. The group split into groups of 2 and started to explore the house. The house was not big, and there were only 4 rooms. With the living room that they entered as the center, the left side was the bedroom, and the right side was the kitchen and bathroom. The visitors rummaged through the cupboards to look for the body, and Chen Ge sat on the sofa, looking at the mannequin's head. In medium difficulty, we only need to find the body to clear the scenario, but will the condition change for hellish difficulty? He held the ball of paper that he had taken out from the mannequin's mouth. Every midnight, he'll be killed using various methods. Is he trapped in a nightmare that he can't wake up from, or is his death real? Ah! A scream from inside the bedroom interrupted Chen Ge's thought. Moments later, a female visitor ran out from the bedroom. The youngest boy followed behind her. He held a bloodied axe in his left hand, and his right held the mannequin's thigh that had been sliced into 3 pieces. I found this under the armoire, and I also found this. The boy dropped a coat on the sofa. There are also parts of the mannequin's body inside the coat's pocket. I suggest you all come and take a look. I can't handle this alone. Chen Ge placed all the bodies on the coffee table and then entered the bedroom with the young man. The armoire door was open, and all the clothes inside were stained with blood. A bloodied table lamp sat in the corner of the armoire. The axe was also found in the corner of the armoire. It's a prop, and it's not sharpened. The young man's expression was relatively calm. He was not spooked. The body was placed together with the murder weapon. Chen Ge seemed to understand something, and he turned to look at the living room. On the fruit platter on the coffee table, other than the 5 fingers, there was also a fruit knife. There was also a table knife under the tray with the human head in the fridge. He took out all the clothes from the closet, rummaged through the pockets, and placed the mannequin body parts on the table. The other visitors looked at him. Even though they knew that the body parts were fake, they still felt disgusted and uncomfortable. The more they looked at Chen Ge, the more they realized how scary he was. Not only did this man not show any fear, he even pieced the various parts of the body parts together. Looking at how focused he was, he looked very much like himself when he was playing with puzzles. Isn't he the owner of a haunted house? How do you know these things? Perhaps he used to be a medical student. That would explain why the students keep visiting his haunted house. They are probably there to support their senior. A relatively intact body slowly appeared on the coffee table. With the talents of dollmaker and mortician's makeup, Chen Ge had a deep understanding of the human body. After rummaging through all the clothes, Chen Ge finally found what he was looking for. He found a second note inside one of the coat pockets. This is an inescapable nightmare. I have to find a way to end it. I can't just sit here and wait for death. Did you find anything? Just as the bespectacled man asked that question, the clock on the wall suddenly rang. It was midnight. Following the sound of cuckoo, the small door under the clock opened, and a cuckoo bird appeared. There was a black and red heart attached to its body. Be careful! The youngest boy suddenly screamed. He looked at his wristwatch and retreated into the crowd. No one knew what the boy's occupation was, but from his reaction, it seemed like his occupation allowed him to predict danger. The sound of water splashing echoed in the bathroom. The curtain in the living room was lifted. Other than the crying of a woman and the laughter of a little girl, there was a third voice. It sounded like someone was talking in his sleep. It was hard to tell what he was saying, but it was clear that it was a man's voice. Something's coming. The closet in the bedroom creaked noisily. The few visitors looked into the closet, and the closet that had been emptied by Chen Ge suddenly had a new coat. It was a blood-red coat. Blood flowed down the coat, and it swayed lightly inside the dark closet. The police and the other visitors were squeezed in the middle of the living room, and the scene before them appeared to be something that was not part of the script. A red specter? Chen Ge narrowed his eyes, and his pupils narrowed. Whenever he saw a bloody coat, he would have an instinctive reaction. Pa! The drying rack inside the closet fell to the ground, and strangely enough, the blood-red coat was still hanging inside the closet. Just as everyone's attention was attracted by the red specter, the television in the living room flickered and turned on its own. The sudden light caused the few to turn back to look. The television kept flickering, and when the image changed, they could see a blob of black. The weak light above their heads flickered several times before going off. Now they could only rely on the light from the television to see their surroundings. Is he awake? Who's that? An unfamiliar male voice came from one of the rooms, and the few visitors turned to look around. The bedroom. Look at the bedroom. The swaying coat ran out from the closet on its own. When everyone's attention was attracted by the television, the coat hung on the bedroom door. Don't be afraid. Let's go take a look together. The police officer's voice was so nervous that even Chen Ge suspected that they were sent by the haunted house. He and the bespectacled man approached the bedroom. When they were about to reach the door, the half-open bedroom door was suddenly pushed open, and an arm that was covered in wounds suddenly reached out to pull the coat behind the door. Before the police officer and the bespectacled man could react, a decapitated head poked out from behind the door. He was holding an axe that was stained with blood, and he swung it at the police officer's head. The police officer was scared to the ground. He screamed and tried to dodge. The strange man rushed out from the bedroom and swung the axe at everyone in the living room. A man's hysterical voice could be heard around them. Die, die, die. Everyone ran for cover, and only Chen Ge stood where he was. The swinging axe pierced through his body. The strange man rushed past him and crawled into the bathroom. There's a red specter in their projection. When Chen Ge saw the strange man, he knew that it was just a projection. Even though the blood on the man's body was very realistic, the blood that dripped down did not drip onto the floor, and the door that the man touched was very clean. The projection will only appear when the light is obviously dimmer. That should be the limitation of technology. This is too scary. The police officer stood up with his hand over his chest. We need to find the body. We can't stay here any longer. There's no need to rush. I already know what has happened inside this house. Chen Ge picked up the head on the coffee table. The clue is hidden in that projection. If you look closely, you'll realize that the face of that projection is the same as this head. What does that prove? The police officer looked at Chen Ge, who was holding the head in his hands. He had a feeling that the man was very familiar with even holding the head. The first note says that the owner of this house will be killed every night at midnight using various methods. Pay attention to the words here. Killed by a human. Why is he so sure that it's a human? Chen Ge took out the second note. The new note says that he is preparing to resist, and there is a murder weapon placed next to every body in the house. That should be a hint as well. We don't have time to listen to you. You just need to tell us what to do. The wooden board above the door was chopped down again, and the chef could come in at any moment. The owner will be killed every night, and the killer is himself. That is the cycle that he has fallen into. Chen Ge thought that the futuristic theme park scenario was not bad, but due to the lack of time, the details were not as good as they should have been. Then how are we going to escape? Kill the owner of the house again. The man with the glasses was about to ask Chen Ge when a scream came from outside the door. It sounded like it came from the chef. What is this? Open the door, let me in. The chef suddenly pounded on the door with all his might. The door shook violently, and then the chef seemed to fall to the ground. His voice slowly faded away. What is the meaning of this? The few visitors inside the house looked at each other. The woman with the long black hair made a surreptitious gesture at the police officer. The police officer shook his head, and his expression darkened. How come it's so quiet? Chen Ge walked to the door and pressed on the doorknob. He looked at the gap that had been created by the cleaver. The chef was no longer there, and there was only a little girl hugging a rag doll in the eerie corridor. This child had appeared at the cinema before. The rag doll in her arms had half of its face burned away, and it looked scary. Chen Ge used his yin-yang vision, but he did not get anything. The girl did not give off any presence that made him feel uncomfortable. "Did you see anything?" the police officer whispered to ask Chen Ge. Chen Ge was leaning against the door, and his eyes were glued to the gap that had been created by the cleaver earlier. He was worried that the chef would try to hack into the room again. "The chef has disappeared. This should have been purposely arranged by the haunted house." After saying that, Chen Ge paid attention to the crowd's reaction. The visitors inside the room did not expect something like this to happen. Chen Ge was about to open the door when the police officer next to him stopped him. Earlier, the chef wanted to come in. He seemed to have run into something scary outside the door. "If you open the door now, the thing that the chef ran into will enter the room. But if you don't open the door, you'll never know what he ran into." Chen Ge was the complete opposite of the other visitors. "We're now a team. You can ignore your own safety, but you can't drag us down with you." The police officer panicked. He grabbed Chen Ge's arm. He had used a lot of strength at that moment. It did not look like he was faking it. Through various observations, it was not until that moment that Chen Ge confirmed that the futuristic theme park's haunted house was really hiding something. The police officer knew about this, but he did not share this information with his colleagues. "Okay, then we'll continue to solve the mystery." Chen Ge raised his head to look at the wall. When the blood shadow rushed into the bathroom, the clock had changed back to 11:56 a.m. The clock had rewound, but the lights did not come back on. The crying and the girl's laughter did not stop. The situation gets worse after every cycle. "Let's hurry up and look for the corpses. Who knows what new monsters will appear when the next midnight arrives." With that in mind, all the visitors started to search for the mannequins' bodies. Chen Ge showed his amazing ability. From the perspective of a haunted house designer, he found most of the mannequins alone. Most of the body parts were hidden in very hidden places like the cracked floor, the back of the toilet bowl, the overflowing drain, and so on. His professional skills and keen intuition made the tourists around him feel an inexplicable chill. At 11:59 p.m., everyone placed the body parts they found on the coffee table. The scene was extremely scary. The visitors stayed away, and Chen Ge was the only one left on the sofa. 5 organs, spine, limbs, skull, and human skin. The design of this puppet is very delicate, but the texture is too bad. It's too different from the skin of a living person. The difficulty of a hellish scenario was high. If not for Chen Ge, it would have taken them a long time just to find the body parts, and it would have taken them even longer to piece them back together. In less than a minute, Chen Ge had almost pieced the body parts back together. At that moment, the clock on the wall chimed again. It was the second midnight. The television screeched, and the pots and pans fell from the kitchen. The cupboard door slowly opened, and everyone saw a wounded man curled up inside the cupboard. His face was filled with fear, and he held a sharp knife in his hand. When everyone saw him, he crawled out from the cupboard and charged at Chen Ge at a speed faster than a normal person. Sitting on the sofa, Chen Ge did not move and allowed the man to pass through his body. Another projection? Even though this was the second time they had seen the dead man's projection, they were still spooked. The time on the clock returned to 11:56 p.m. The second reincarnation did not seem that scary. It merely repeated the scares from the previous reincarnation. Every reincarnation, there will be an additional projection. As long as we can get used to it, this scenario will be relatively easy. The man with the glasses laughed dryly. Are your eyes used to vent your anger? Can't you see the flickering frequency of the television screen changing? We've been staying in the dark for longer and longer. Chen Ge did not even raise his head. The surrounding walls have started to bleed. That's when the girl from the previous scenario appeared. The bed sheet that was pulled back. Earlier, none of you went into the bedroom, which means that someone else has entered this room. The next reincarnation might be a real person. The previous 2 times were just to numb you. Chen Ge said a lot, and the man with the glasses was speechless. In the end, he mumbled softly, "The room is so dark." Even if the eyes aren't used to vent their anger, they wouldn't have noticed these things, right? During the conversation, Chen Ge had finished piecing the body back together. He turned to the police officer. "How did you get out the last time you were here?" "We found the body under the bed. There was a diary inside the body's pocket." It recorded some information about the owner of the room, the map of the surrounding rooms, and the key to open the window. The police officer recited the guide honestly. The key to open the window? Yes, there is a large lock on the window. Climbing through the window will lead us to the third scenario. The police officer entered the bedroom carefully. He pulled back the thick curtains, and behind them was a black window that was embedded in the wall. Earlier, I thought the key would be inside one of the body parts, but now I know I was wrong. We have to find the key before we can leave. Chen Ge looked at the body that had been pieced back together, and his expression changed. What's wrong? The group gathered around, and they saw Chen Ge pick up the phone that had a black screen. Earlier, he had been so focused on piecing the mannequin together that he had placed the phone on the coffee table to livestream the process. Now that he was done, he realized that the livestream had gone black. He quickly logged back in, but it said that the streamer had violated the rules and was correcting them. The livestream was black, but the number of viewers was still close to 1 million. The viewers who were watching the livestream were all laughing. I'm a new fan, and I've only watched the streamer 3 times. Twice, he was banned halfway through. Now I don't know whether it's my problem or the streamer's. Grass, a type of plant, sexy streamer, piecing together the body. Hopefully, the streamer will realize his mistake and reflect on why he is there every time there is an anti-pornography campaign. Brother Gang is a real man. Looking at the chatroom that was filled with comments, Chen Ge was so angry that he laughed. It was rare to have 1 million viewers. The money that he had earned from this livestream alone was enough to install more cameras at the School of the Afterlife. I have no idea why I'm there every time. Perhaps it's because my livestream is too explicit. Chen Ge then grabbed the mannequin's spine and tossed the body to the side. I thought it would be a simple livestream to provide the viewers with some good content, but the screen still went black. Chen Ge reached into his backpack and pressed the play button on the recorder. Then, he walked toward the living room door alone. By then, the woman's crying and the girl's laughter were approaching. The other visitors quickly stopped Chen Ge. Don't go out. We're so close to solving the puzzle. We'll find the exit soon. Quote. Exit. Chen Ge grabbed the doorknob directly. Isn't this the door? It is the door, but if there's a door, then there's a way, and if there's a way, then there's a way. Holding the backpack with one hand, Chen Ge opened the door and looked down the corridor. There was no sign of the chef in the dark corridor. Chen Ge stood in the middle of the corridor with his hands on the wall. His pupils narrowed as he stared at the end of the corridor. There are surveillance cameras installed at the top left corner of the theater and at the corner of the corridor. Just how rich is the futuristic theme park? They're willing to install 2 surveillance cameras in one corridor. Quote. Chen Ge wanted to summon Xu Yin, but he had to avoid the surveillance cameras and the other visitors. This was not his haunted house, so he had to be careful. I need a suitable opportunity, and the best way is to lure away the lingering spirits inside the haunted house. When they show up, I'll have Xu Yin or another red specter take their place. A haunted house could be haunted, but the ghost had to have nothing to do with Chen Ge. The static of the recorder entered his ears, and Chen Ge's emotions slowly calmed down. The woman's crying and the girl's laughter did not affect him at all. Come back. What are you doing? The police officer and the other visitors surrounded the door, and they saw Chen Ge lower his head to pick up the rag doll from the corner. What are you doing? Touching the rag doll's charred face, Chen Ge looked at the rag doll's black eyes. Did any of you see a girl hugging this rag doll earlier? I remember. I think she came out from theater last. The police officer tried to remember. Why are you suddenly asking this? When I peeked through the gap on the door, the chef had already disappeared. At the time, the girl was hugging the rag doll and walking toward us. But when I opened the door, there was no one in the corridor. There was only this rag doll with a charred face left in the corner. Chen Ge hugged the rag doll in his arms. He thought about it and added, no, it wasn't left in the corner. Someone purposely placed it there, like the rag doll was used to monitor us. Turning around, Chen Ge turned to the other visitors. Do you think a haunted house would hire a girl as an actor? Stay away from me for now. The police officer stared at the rag doll in Chen Ge's arms like it was something ominous. I'm not sure whether the theme park will hire a little girl or not. In any case, when I was here last time, I didn't see the little girl, and I didn't hear the girl's laughter. Even the crying that we heard at the beginning only appeared when the tour was about to end. In other words, the girl isn't an actor from the theme park or a visitor. Then, what could she be? Chen Ge purposely led the group down a path of no return. Maybe it's a projection, the bespectacled man whispered. Have you ever seen a projection hugging a rag doll and running around? This doll is much heavier than I thought. After Chen Ge said that, he tossed the rag doll in his arms at the man. When the visitors saw the rag doll, they all moved away. They seemed to be very afraid of the rag doll. Chen Ge saw this and remembered it. Why didn't any of you answer it? The rag doll fell to the ground. Its limbs were twisted, and its charred face looked up at the surrounding visitors. Its black eyes stared at each and every one of them. None of the visitors reached out to touch the doll. After a long time, the youngest boy took several steps back. In horror movies, children and dolls are a classic combination. When you run into these two things inside a haunted house, of course you should stay away from them. There's one more thing you need to pay attention to. Didn't we hear from the park staff when we came in? To create a scary atmosphere, the haunted house has placed many old objects of unknown origin inside. Quote. Then how can you be so sure that this rag doll is an old object? Chen Ge picked up the poor rag doll again and shoved it directly into his backpack. Hey, this belongs to the theme park. It's not appropriate for you to take it with you, is it? A female visitor reminded him. This is a very important clue. I have to carry it with me. If you don't believe me, I can let you keep it for yourself. Chen Ge's words silenced the other party. You sure are brave. Aren't you afraid that there's really something dirty on it? The police officer whispered. He did not want to get close to Chen Ge anymore. People with a guilty conscience will think that there's something dirty on it, but they don't know that the real dirty thing is their eyes. Chen Ge grabbed the bulging backpack with one hand and walked toward the theater. He wanted to confirm how the girl had appeared. After turning the corner, Chen Ge tried to push the door of the theater, but it appeared to be blocked by something heavy. He used ghost ear to listen, but there was no sound inside the theater. The first scenario is the 7 students taking the ghost teacher to watch a movie on Soul's Night. It's the reincarnation of the soul. The second scenario is the owner waking up from a nightmare and killing himself again and again. In a way, it's the reincarnation of the physical body. In between the two scenarios is a corridor filled with broken limbs, and there's a hell chef in the corridor. Are these 3 scenarios random, or are they connected? With the camera above his head, Chen Ge could not break down the door. There's something wrong with the girl. As long as she's not a red specter, she won't be able to leave the item of possession forever. I only need to guard the rag doll, and she will return. The problem is that this haunted house probably has more than one ghost. When I first entered the scenario, I felt waves of cold. Initially, I thought it was some kind of new technology, but now that I think about it, that kind of coldness that reaches the soul, other than lingering spirits and baleful specters, there doesn't seem to be any other explanation. Chen Ge knew very well that Eastern Zhejiang was different from Western Zhejiang. His parents did not have the courage to build a haunted house in Eastern Zhejiang, but the futuristic theme park had done what they had failed to do. The haunted house was already thick with yin energy, and it was easy to attract lost lingering spirits. The futuristic theme park even purposely collected various old objects and placed them inside. This was not increasing the difficulty but playing with fire. Eastern Zhejiang was not a paradise, Chen Ge knew that. The ghost fetus had not been dealt with, and who knew how many more doors were hidden in Eastern Zhejiang. Thinking about the location of the futuristic theme park, it was sandwiched between Liwan City and Zhongyuan Apartments. The 3 could form a line in Eastern Zhejiang. There is a problem with the location of the futuristic theme park. It might be better after the bridge is repaired, but will they be able to last until then? The theme park itself was sandwiched between 2 doors, and the haunted house was at the back of the theme park, where the yin energy was thicker. One could say that this place was the most yin in yin. Not only did the visitors like to come here, but so did the lingering spirits and specters. They sure have a mind for business. They managed to find such a tricky location. Chen Ge did not know much about feng shui, but he knew that his family had moved from Eastern Zhejiang. The popularity of the theme park during the day can suppress those bad things, but at night, when the specters are the most active, what about the theme park? Even if I didn't come, it would have been a problem sooner or later. Chen Ge felt the heavy responsibility on his shoulders. He found another reason for himself to protect New Century Park. He could not allow the futuristic theme park to harm more people. The entrance was blocked, and Chen Ge did not want to break down the door before everyone. He was afraid that the futuristic theme park might leave behind some evidence to add to the story. The crying and laughter are still there. The ghosts haven't gone far, but I can't see them anymore. Returning to the room, Chen Ge saw the dead body on the coffee table. The key for medium difficulty is inside the body. This is just a passing scenario. To clear this hellish scenario, I need to really solve the puzzle inside the room. Normally, solving the puzzle was not a problem, but the problem was that the scenarios had merged with each other. Various projections and supernatural events might appear where they should not, and that increased the difficulty of solving the puzzle. The few visitors were wasting their time at the door when the clock on the wall rang again. The ugly cuckoo bird crawled out from the box below the clock. The heart that was attached to its body had been removed, but the blood inside the heart had dyed the cuckoo bird red. If the owner has killed himself, then to break the cycle, we have to stop him from killing himself. There are two ways to stop him from killing himself. One is to protect him from being killed by himself, and the other is for us to kill him. That way, we can break this cycle. Chen Ge picked up the axe next to the sofa. Before the room changed again, he aimed it at the body that had just been pieced together. The mannequin split into pieces again, and a fresh blood mark was left on its body. It's useless. Should we try using different murder weapons to kill him? Then won't we be trapped in the same cycle as him? Killing could not break the cycle. Chen Ge realized that. The haunted house still needs to operate normally, so we can't encourage killing. We should protect the big picture. While Chen Ge was thinking, the curtains in the living room were pulled back, and half a human face peeked out. It was the owner in a bloody outfit. He stared in a certain direction before pulling out the blade and charging out from behind the curtain. Different from the previous two times, other than behind the curtain, there were also projections that appeared behind the toilet door and under the bed. In the darkness, three bloody faces looked at the visitors inside the room from different angles before charging at them like madmen. The projections could not cause actual damage, but even though they knew they were fake, when they got close, they still felt instinctively afraid. Her adrenaline surged, and she covered her eyes and screamed. The few visitors were all squeezed in the middle of the living room. Only Chen Ge stared at the back of the projection as it left. There's a problem. Why are all the projections rushing into the living room every time? No matter where they hide, they will eventually rush into the living room with weapons in their hands and then disappear. Is it just because most of the visitors are gathered in the living room? Quote. Chen Ge stretched out his hand to draw out the trajectories of the projections. He was surprised to find that although all the projections were hiding in different locations, if he were to link their hiding and disappearing positions together, the trajectories produced by the projections actually had a point of intersection in the living room. None of the projections are targeting us. It's the sofa in the center of the living room. Quote. Chen Ge moved the sofa away and tapped on the floor. It's empty down there. His fingertips slid across the wooden floor. Soon, Chen Ge found an uneven spot. He pushed upwards and lifted that piece of floor. A faded stench permeated the air. There was a female body stuck in the space under the floor. The body was covered in wounds, and her hands were hugging a black videotape. A second body. All the visitors gathered, and their eyes widened. The police officer was also confused. Why would there be a second body? The answer should be inside the videotape. Chen Ge inserted the videotape into the machine under the television, and a new image appeared on the flickering screen. Li Zhang's paranoia worsened. I thought I could use love to change him, but I realized I was wrong, very wrong. Once he saw me talking to another man, he would think that I had done something wrong to him. I was worried that his illness would harm the child, so I sent the child back home, but he thought I was trying to sow discord between him and the child. He even suspected that the child was someone else's, and I sent the child away to prevent him from realizing the difference between him and the child. Doctor, now he's starting to suspect you. He thinks we're conspiring to kill him. He's so scary when he's acting up. One night, I suddenly woke up and realized he was lying on the bed, looking at me silently. I was so scared at the time. I'm really scared. I don't dare sleep in the same room with him anymore. If he sleeps in the bedroom, I'll sleep in the living room. If he sleeps in the living room, I'll lock myself in the bedroom. Doctor, your medicine is working. Li Zhang's condition is very stable. Recently, we've been sleeping in separate rooms, but probably because of my nervous breakdown, even though I'm sleeping in separate rooms, I still feel uncomfortable at night. I keep feeling like there's a thief in the room. Tomorrow, I'll install a surveillance camera in the house. Quote. After the woman finished her narration, there was a surveillance video. In the dead of night, the woman was sleeping soundly in bed. Suddenly, her bedsheet moved, and half of a man's face appeared. A man slowly crawled out from under the bed with a cleaver. Then the screen flickered, and everything disappeared. After a while, the television returned to normal. This time, the woman was sleeping on the sofa. Not long after that, the bedroom door was pushed open. A man held a table lamp and tiptoed out. The video flickered again. This time, the woman was lying on her side inside the bathtub, and the man was hiding behind the bathroom door with a fruit knife. From this scene, it was obvious that the woman was already dead, but the man chose to kill her over and over again. He refused to let her go, and at the same time, he wanted to torment himself. This room contains two reincarnations. One is the dead woman being killed over and over again, and the other is the man killing over and over again until he has completely lost his mind. He has forgotten whether he is the killer or the victim. His paranoia is so serious that he suspects he has killed himself. Chen Ge found the key to open the window inside the woman's pocket. The design of this scenario was quite interesting. The key was in the wife's pocket, but the killer did not know that. He was unable to walk out from the reincarnation that he had created for himself. The plot is not bad, the designer is a genius. Chen Ge glanced at the police officer next to him. I heard there are quite a few designers working at the reincarnation theme park. Do you know who designed this scenario? When the police officer saw the key in Chen Ge's hand, he sincerely believed in Chen Ge. These scenarios are all automatically generated by the central computer based on the large database. Of course, I have only heard about them from others. Central computer. Chen Ge slowed down. How much does this central computer cost? I don't know much about these things. The whole AI system probably costs more than 10 million, right? The police officer scratched his head like he did not understand why Chen Ge would suddenly ask such a question. Come on, we'll move on to the next scenario. Chen Ge replaced the wooden board. He took the key and entered the bedroom. He personally unlocked the window. Complicated patterns flowed on the wall, and the dark window was slowly pushed open by Chen Ge. A gust of yin energy came at him, and Chen Ge narrowed his eyes. The muscles on his back tensed, and he maintained the posture of pushing open the window. This scenario is hiding those things. Chen Ge was familiar with that feeling. His pupils narrowed, and he started to study the new scenario before him. On the other side of the window was a Japanese-style room. The furniture and decorations were also Japanese style. Of course, that was not the main point. What concerned Chen Ge the most was the walls. The four walls were covered in bloody handprints, and the lights on the ceiling flickered on and off. Under the square lights, there were many dead moths, and next to them were traces of burning candles. It was as if someone had stood under the lights and used the candles to slowly burn away the moths' wings. After the door to the new scenario opened, the scenario behind Chen Ge changed. Blood leaked from the ceiling, and the door to the corridor was pushed open. Footsteps came from outside the door. Before the visitors could react, the door that led from the living room to the corridor was closed. A girl's laughter came from outside the door like the child was standing outside the door. Is she here to look for her doll? Even though Chen Ge felt that it was not right for a grown man to steal a child's toy, when he thought about how he was going to save her and help her escape from the abyss of misery, the pressure in Chen Ge's heart lightened. Chen Ge, I've been to this scenario before. Initially, the police officer's attitude toward Chen Ge was harsh, but without him noticing, his attitude slowly changed. He did not realize that it was because he was really afraid. Is there anything that we need to pay attention to? There are curses inside the room, and they're attached to 3 items. We need to find those 3 items while the monsters are attacking us. Then, we need to place them inside the altar and use the statue inside the altar to cleanse the curse. The police officer thought back. The hellish difficulty has to be higher. This time, we might need to find more than 10 items. Finding more than 10 items isn't that hard, but I'm afraid the whole room has been enveloped by the curse, and everyone inside is cursed. With his yin-yang vision, Chen Ge could see that everything in the room was tainted with bad luck, and the visitors who touched these items would have their luck affected. This reflected the difference between Chen Ge's haunted house and the futuristic theme park. Chen Ge's haunted house could allow his employees to consume the negative emotions of the visitors, but the futuristic theme park's haunted house was in a state of chaos. The visitors were infected with bad luck, and they would spread this bad luck to their family. Curses are different from malicious spirits. Chen Ge was reminded of his experience in Liwan City. The shadow was very good at curses, and that appeared to be a specialty of the ghosts in eastern Zhejiang. Entering the room through the window, Chen Ge heard the sound of a bell ringing. The sound came out of nowhere, as if it was informing the owner of the house that a guest had arrived. When you're rummaging through the room, you'd better use your own clothes as a cushion. Don't use your body to touch anything in the room. Hearing what Chen Ge said, the few visitors were confused. They looked at each other, and their faces were filled with question marks. To prevent Chen Ge from noticing the problem, they did not communicate much, but with the hint from the police officer and the youngest boy, they all followed Chen Ge's instructions. There are wine bottles and trash in the corner, and there are 3 different brands of cigarette butts in the ashtray. The clothes and shoes scattered around the room are of different sizes. Not long ago, there was a gathering in this room, and they all appeared to be drunk. Yes, I found the relevant information in the bedroom during my last visit. A group of people went to a friend's house in the countryside to have fun, but the heavy rain caused a landslide. They were unable to return, so they stayed at the friend's house. The police officer's words confirmed Chen Ge's suspicion, and the police officer himself was shocked by Chen Ge's sharp observation. The information is in the bedroom. Chen Ge walked into the bedroom alone. When he pushed open the door, a little girl's singing echoed in his ears. The voice was pure and ethereal, but it was laced with sadness. Chen Ge did not understand the specific lyrics, but he could make out the words moth and butterfly. The whole Japanese scenario consisted of 6 rooms, and the bedroom that Chen Ge entered was one of the smallest of the 6. The quilt was spread on the ground, and the small space was littered with many things. There were men's shoes and clothes, and there were many women's hair. However, the most eye-catching item was probably a camcorder that was attached to a suitcase. The reason this device was attached to the suitcase was because Chen Ge suspected that the theme park was afraid that the device would be stolen. Who would steal something that exudes bad luck? Chen Ge turned on the camcorder, and the images of 4 men and 3 women flashed. During the day, they played around the village, admiring the beautiful scenery and fresh air. At night, when they prepared to drive away, the sky suddenly started to rain. The elders in the village said that the road out of the village was blocked by a landslide, so they had to stay in the village and wait until the sun came up. The elders in the village said that the road was blocked. They didn't see it with their own eyes, and they decided to stay there. Quote. Chen Ge continued to watch, and the other visitors came to join him. Of the 7, 1 was a local, and he arranged for the other 6 to stay at the ancestral home. The rain did not stop, but the group's good mood was not affected. They drank and played cards inside the house until midnight. The image on the camcorder dimmed. The 7 were gathered in the main living room, and the alcohol was almost finished. One of them, a fat man with glasses, was about to go to the toilet when he saw an altar placed at the darkest corner at the end of the corridor. A normal altar was placed on a table, and this was the first time he had seen an altar placed in the corridor. In the video, the drunken fat man squatted before the altar. He tilted his head to look into the altar, and he seemed to have heard something strange. Reaching out to grab the black cloth that covered the altar, the fat man was about to pull it back when someone called him from behind. It was the person who recorded the video. The fat man shuddered and crawled up from the ground. After he returned from the toilet, he sidled up to the ancestral home's owner and asked about the altar. The owner said that he had no idea. He went to school alone in the city, and one day, he received a call from the police, saying that his parents and grandmother had been caught in a landslide when they were driving home. The car had flipped into the river, and now he was the only one left at home. At that moment, another man put down the glass and mysteriously told the others that the altar placed on the table was for the god, and the altar placed in the dark corner was for the ghost. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. The video on the camcorder was still playing. It was unclear whether it was due to the lighting or some other reason, but the video was getting blurry like it was being shrouded in darkness. The man's words in the video attracted the interest of the others. Under their constant questioning, the man told them about something that had happened to him. When he was young, there was also an altar at home. The altar was placed directly opposite the living room door, and it was covered with a thick black cloth. Before the man's grandfather died, he told his family that no matter what happened after his death, they should not open the altar. When it was time for his burial, they should bury the altar directly inside their coffin. Due to the issue of the inheritance, the family had a falling out after the grandfather's death. The argument soon turned into a physical fight, and during the fight, the altar was toppled over. The adults argued until their faces were red. No one cared about the toppled altar. Instead, it was young Xiao Sun who glanced curiously at the altar. Then Xiao Sun did something that no one expected. He turned toward the altar and shouted, "Grandfather." The voice scared the adults who were fighting over the inheritance. They all stared at Xiao Sun, but the young Xiao Sun was squatting before the altar. His eyes were glued to the altar like his grandfather was hiding inside it. There was a saying in the countryside that children could see ghosts. The adults thought that the old man was angry, so they quickly replaced the altar. In the end, according to the will, they sold the old house and buried the altar together with the old man's ashes. That was the end of the story, but the man's tone changed. On the day of the old man's burial, Xiao Sun, who had seen the things inside the altar, disappeared. It was like he had evaporated from the world. No one knew where he had gone, and no one knew what he had seen inside the altar. In the video, after listening to the man's story, the friends were not only not afraid, they even started to encourage the owner of the ancestral home to open their own altar. Under the influence of alcohol, the few of them made a ruckus as they walked towards the corridor. Some of them were holding wine glasses, some were holding phones, and some were recording with a camcorder. It was raining heavily outside the old house, and the few stopped next to the altar. The fat man who had walked past the altar earlier stood at the front. He reached out to pull back the black cloth on the altar and used his chubby hands to grab the altar's door. Just as Fatty was about to open the altar, a flash of lightning flashed through the window. All the lights in the room suddenly went out. At the same time, just as the few tourists were focusing on the video recording, the lights in the real world also went off. Reality and the recording were synchronized. Screams came from the recording, and the tourists in real life were also screaming. Everything was like a replay. There was the sound of the shrine door opening in the darkness. After a few seconds, the lights in the video and in reality returned at the same time. In the video, the 7 friends gathered in the corridor were stunned. They realized that the door to the shrine had been opened. The 7 of them looked at each other and then at the fatty. The fatty was confused and said that he did not use any strength at all and that he was not the one who opened the altar. When he saw this, Chen Ge shouted at the tourists around him, "Get out of the way." He looked at the end of the corridor. In the dark corner, the lonely altar had been opened. When was it opened? I have no idea, the police officer said with a helpless expression. When I was here last time, this wasn't there. The video was still playing. The camera was attached to the suitcase, and the suitcase was stuck between the bed and the cupboard, making it difficult to remove. Chen Ge's group could only temporarily ignore the altar and continue to watch. When the light returned to the room, the group saw that there was nothing inside the altar. They all thought that the legend was a lie, so they returned to the main hall. They played for a while longer and felt bored. They cleaned up the room, piled the bottles and various trash in the corner, and then returned to their rooms to sleep. The camera was taken away by one of them. He returned to his room, which was the room that Chen Ge's group was in. The man said goodnight to the camcorder and turned it off. The visitors thought that was the end of the video, but after a while, a new video appeared. The man, who had been calm earlier, was curled up inside the quilt. His shaking hands held the camera that he had just turned on. Just as the visitors had no idea what he was doing, the man sneaked the camera out from under the quilt, and the camera was aimed at the bedroom cupboard. The lights in the bedroom were not on, and the room was dark. The cupboard in the video did not look that scary, but it was not closed tightly, so there was a gap. The video stopped, and at that moment, an eye suddenly flashed in the cupboard. The video was shaking. It was clear that the man hiding inside the quilt was afraid, and he was forcing himself not to make a sound. The man was sure that there was something hiding inside the cupboard. He kept the camera aimed at the cupboard, but the eye did not appear again. After a while, the camera seemed to be running out of battery. The man held the camera with one hand and reached for something with the other, but at that moment, the video suddenly shook like the man had touched something. Then the man's hand that held the camera slowly turned, and he aimed the camera at himself. The video showed his face, and it also showed the other face inside the quilt. The man wanted to scream, but the messy black hair strangled his neck and stuffed into his mouth. The camera dropped, and the video stopped at the door. Following the direction of the camera, they could see the altar that had been opened at the end of the corridor. After watching the video, the surrounding visitors broke out in cold sweat. Since they knew that the strategy was useless, all the visitors turned to look at Chen Ge. He seemed to have become the center of attention. The most dangerous thing in this scenario is the altar. Normally, the visitors would not open it, but in hell mode, someone helped us open it. Chen Ge turned around and realized that everyone was waiting for him to continue. I'm just a volunteer. Can you guys have your own ideas? Of the 7-member group, 6 were spies, and the only visitor had become the group leader. Chen Ge wanted to find out more information. These visitors were still useful, so he had to pretend that he did not notice them. The video did not tell us what was inside the altar, but the reason why this house is in this state must have something to do with the altar. The key to escape should be on the altar as well. If I remember correctly, one of you is a detective, and he can find the location of a clue after entering a new scenario. Quote, I'm a detective. The man with the glasses raised his wristwatch to look at it. The clue is hidden inside the altar. The few visitors walked out of the bedroom and came to the end of the corridor. The man with the glasses shone the light into the altar. They bent down to look, and they realized that the inner walls of the altar were filled with the word, death, that had been carved out with fingernails. Why are there so many death characters carved inside the altar? This doesn't look like a place where a deity lives. The detective crawled at the front, and when he saw the writing inside the altar, his face blanched from fear. Didn't the video explain it earlier? The altar placed on the table is for the deity, and this kind of altar placed in the corner is for something else. A woman gathered her courage and squatted down before the altar. She carefully peered into it. It was unclear what material the altar was made of. It looked like wood, but it felt sticky to the touch like one was touching a pool of blood that was about to congeal. Ever since the small door at the bottom of the altar was opened, a faded stench had drifted out from the altar. I'm sorry to say this, but I don't think any ghosts would want to stay inside this box. The police officer silently stood beside Chen Ge. Other than that, I have to tell you one more thing. When I came to challenge this place last time, there were no bloody words inside the altar. After he said that, he turned to look at the girl who was squatting before the altar. The girl slowly stood up with confusion in her eyes. She surreptitiously shook her head at the police officer and the black-haired woman. The few visitors appeared to be responsible for different jobs inside the haunted house, and this girl appeared to be responsible for fixing the props and mechanisms. Seeing her shake her head, the police officer's expression darkened. With some hesitation, he turned to Chen Ge and said, "How about we stop moving forward? Don't rush to clear the scenario, and we'll accompany you to explore the first few scenarios." The police officer was basically telling Chen Ge, "We're not scaring you, and you should stop moving forward and make us look bad. We're all going to be safe. We have to continue moving forward. Even if we don't go find them, they'll come find us." Chen Ge had already noticed the few visitors communicating with each other through their eyes. He also saw the girl shake her head at the police officer, and it was after the girl gave him that the police officer suggested to stop the exploration. The visitors were afraid, and the reason for their fear was related to this altar. Chen Ge grabbed the edge of the altar with both of his hands. He wanted to look at it from a different angle, but he realized with a shock that the altar was fixed to the ground and was connected to the whole house. The reincarnation haunted house was built by the futuristic theme park, so why should they be afraid? Although these employees were not very courageous, to be chosen to accompany him, they must be the kind of people who were smart and capable in business. Something that could make them retreat in fear must be a big problem. Chen Ge pretended to ask casually, did the designer of the reincarnation haunted house not expect the scenario to become like this? Something like that. The police officer frowned. After he blurted it out, he realized that it was not the right thing to say, so he quickly added, when I came to visit last time, I heard a few of the designers arguing. It seems to be because under the central computer's control, some of the hellish scenarios have changed beyond the design. No matter how powerful an AI system is, it can't affect reality. It has to work with humans and machines to be effective. Chen Ge stared at the inside of the altar, and the tip of his nose twitched. He used the talent he had just obtained, spirit sniff. That's true, but not all questions in the world have answers. The police didn't know how to explain it to Chen Ge. I think I get it now. Chen Ge took a deep breath. All the scenarios are controlled by the central computer, and there will be mistakes and changes when they are combined, but these changes are within the acceptable range, so the designers didn't bother with them. If anything, they were proud of their work. But they neglected a very important factor. These idiots placed some old objects that they found in eastern Zhejiang into the haunted house. The central computer controls the projection and mechanisms to change the scenario and the development model, and the things that are attached to the old objects are silently changing the scenario itself. Quote. What are you talking about? The police officer was confused. My parents own a haunted house, and I grew up inside a haunted house, so of course I know more than you do. Chen Ge signaled for the detective to come over with his phone. The haunted house itself is a place with heavy negative energy. If one isn't careful, something bad will happen. This haunted house purposely placed a lot of unlucky objects inside, so it's normal to attract those things. Do you think we'll believe that? The woman with the long black hair still disagreed with Chen Ge. She would not allow others to talk bad about the futuristic theme park, just like how Chen Ge did not want others to talk bad about New Century Park. He could understand that, but that did not mean that he would give in. Lean closer to look at the writing inside the altar. Under the light, the few resisted the discomfort and looked at the writing. These words were carved out using fingernails. Some of the red marks are dye, and some are blood. Look at the innermost words. Don't you see some impurities between the lines? Quote. Yes, I can see them. With the light from the phone, the few finally got a good look. What is that? If I said it's rotten meat, would you believe me? Chen Ge's expression was scary. There is a stench coming from inside the altar. It's the smell of rotten meat. It's hard to imagine that an altar would give off such a stench. If this is not the work of the futuristic theme park, then it proves that something is wrong with this haunted house. Quote. Narrowing his eyes, Chen Ge scanned the room. The whole Japanese building was giving off a bad vibe, and every item was curled up by something. It was hard to see, but it was definitely there. Then, why don't we retreat to the previous scenario? The police officer was already planning to retreat. He had visited the medium difficulty scenario and knew a lot about this haunted house, but it was because he knew more that he was even more afraid. You all look like you like this theme park a lot. Does anyone know when this theme park started to build a haunted house? Chen Ge could sense the thick resentment and hatred from the writing on the altar. It was the presence of a curse. About 1 month ago. That's when my haunted house became popular online. Chen Ge did not mince his words. The futuristic theme park saw the business opportunity, but they failed to see the danger behind it. Eastern Zhejiang is different from Western Zhejiang. What's different about it? The woman with the long hair frowned like she was trying to get information out of Chen Ge. She knew that the futuristic theme park was an outsider, and Chen Ge was a native of Zhejiang. You'll know in a bit. Chen Ge then took out a rag doll with half of its face burnt from his backpack. What are you doing? Isn't this the girl's toy? The visitors could not guess what Chen Ge was thinking. I wish to do an experiment. After saying that, Chen Ge shoved the rag doll into the altar and closed the door. The altar is the most dangerous place in the whole scenario, so I'll stand guard here. Split into groups of 2 to search the other rooms. If you find anything scary, scream loudly, and I'll come to your aid. Quote. Are you sure you want to stay in the corridor alone and guard this altar? There was a trace of uncertainty in the police officer's voice. Leave him be. The man with the glasses dragged the police officer away, and the few visitors started to search in a hurry. After they left, Chen Ge silently opened the altar and took out the rag doll to take a look. Strangely enough, the rag doll with half of its face showed an expression of fear. The rag doll's expression can change. This altar appears to have some other meaning. Then Chen Ge placed the rag doll inside. He opened his backpack and shoved the red high heels inside as well. Everyone has their own specialties. You're very good at curses, so I'll leave this to you. I know you're very powerful. Placing you inside this altar is my blessing for you. I hope that one day, you'll become a demon god. Quote. Chen Ge said that he wished the red high heels could also become a demon god, but the underlying meaning was that he already had a demon god by his side, so she had better not mess around. After closing the door of the shrine, a few seconds later, tiny beads of blood seeped out of the outside of the shrine. What was even stranger was that the beads of blood slid down the outer wall and converged into 2 different streams of blood. Mutually incompatible. To be able to resist the red high heels, the owner of this altar is a red specter. Quote. Chen Ge straightened up immediately. In fact, he was glad that he had brought all the red specters other than buy out from the haunted house. The problem at the futuristic theme park is more serious than I expected. There are red specters inside the haunted house, and there might be more than one. Chen Ge stared at the altar, and his heart was racing. The red high heels' real power was stronger than the headless woman and Shu Yin, and she was an expert in curses, but a red specter related to the altar was able to resist her. This was something that Chen Ge did not expect. There should be more than one altar inside the haunted house. Part of the person's consciousness is attached to the altar. Just what kind of red specter is this? Before the blood droplets on the outer wall of the altar converged, a shrill scream came from the room furthest away from Chen Ge. The other visitors heard the scream and rushed over to take a look, but Chen Ge still stood guard before the altar. Hurried footsteps rushed down the corridor. In the chaos, Chen Ge suddenly felt an itch on his ear like a butterfly had landed on him. Before he could reach out to scratch it, an ethereal voice suddenly echoed in his ears. When a butterfly's wings are torn off, will it feel pain? Chen Ge's 5 senses were far superior to a normal person's, but he did not notice anything out of place. The voice appeared to have appeared out of thin air. Maintaining his posture, Chen Ge was about to call for Shu Yin when the voice appeared again, repeating the same question. The person did not seem to have any intention of harming him. After a pause, Chen Ge said, "The butterfly's wings are filled with blood vessels, and they are closely connected to the body. Of course, it will be painful to tear them off. Blood vessels. Like the red thread on my mother. Why are there blood red lines in such beautiful wings?" The child's voice was a little confused and a little scary. When a butterfly breaks out of its cocoon, it hangs upside down so that the blood will flow through its wings due to gravity. Only then can the wings have the strength to stretch out and break out of the cocoon. Chen Ge's voice was very gentle. He was like a kindergarten teacher patiently explaining new knowledge to a child. So the butterfly's wings are so beautiful because of those red lines, right? The child's voice was very innocent. That's too much. The butterfly's ability to break out of its cocoon has something to do with gravity. You can't just attribute the beauty of its wings to Newton, can you? Chen Ge used his words to get the boy's attention. He turned his eyes, and his peripheral vision swept to his side. "Come here. Xiaoling is missing." Quote. Before Chen Ge could see the child's face, the police's shouts came from the other side of the corridor. Turning his head to look, Chen Ge realized that there was nothing around him. The child's voice earlier was like an illusion. "I almost saw it." Chen Ge glared at the police officer and slowly stood up. "Aren't they in a group of 2? One has disappeared, but where is the other?" Quote. I was looking for clues with Xiaoling in this room. She screamed after opening the closet. When I turned to look at her, she had already disappeared, the youngest boy said. The Xiaoling that he mentioned was the girl who had leaned against the altar to look inside earlier. She was also quite young. The closet is so close to you. How could a living person disappear before your eyes? Chen Ge pressed on the edge of the closet. Could it be that you guys are purposely putting on an act? I've heard that some haunted houses like to have actors pretend to be visitors to join them. Quote. The youngest boy had a bitter expression on his face. He wanted to ask Chen Ge who had started this, but considering their current situation, he decided to play dumb. I was looking through the trash pile when I heard the closet open, and then I heard Xiaoling scream. But when I turned back to look, the closet door was closed, and Xiaoling had already disappeared. Could she be hiding inside the closet? Chen Ge pulled open the closet door. To his surprise, there was another room behind the door. The room was square, had no windows, and was completely sealed. The walls were covered in talismans, and there was something that looked like salt scattered around the entrance. The girl called Xiaoling was sitting in the middle of the room. She was staring blankly at a corner of the room, and her expression was blank. Xiaoling. The woman with long black hair rushed into the room and hugged Xiaoling, who was lying on the ground. She whispered something into Xiaoling's ear, but Xiaoling did not give her any reply. At that moment, the woman seemed to understand the severity of the problem. She shook Xiaoling's shoulders with both hands. Why did you come here alone? There was a cry for help inside the closet. When I looked inside, I was suddenly pulled back. Xiaoling pointed at her arm. There was a child's bloody handprint there. I'm not playing anymore. I want to leave. Then, she wanted to press a button on the watch, but she was stopped by the woman. Calm down, we haven't even started the tour. How can you give up on your own? The two girls lowered their voices, and Chen Ge saw everything. When Qingming came in, he didn't tell me that I can leave the haunted house by pressing this button on the watch. He looked at the two girls sitting in the middle of the talismans with a smile, and he did not show any intention to pursue the matter. The room is covered in talismans, and there is salt scattered around the door. This means that this room should be the safest place in this scenario. Talismans and salt are things that ghosts are afraid of, so this is a safe zone. If you're afraid, you can stay here. Really? The police officer was tempted. Of course, there is another possibility. Chen Ge's eyes scanned the four corners of the room. This room is probably the scariest place in the whole scenario. All the talismans are there to suppress the evil spirits inside the room. Why? Do you want to make a bet? Quote. Then, never mind. Hearing Chen Ge's voice, the woman hurried to help Xiaoling out of the room. Remember to close the closet door in case something follows you out. Chen Ge and the police officer walked at the front, and they returned to the altar. Soon, the sharp-eyed police officer noticed the blood droplets on the altar. His eyes widened, and he grabbed Chen Ge's arm. Why is the altar bleeding? Do you think I own this haunted house? How would I know? Chen Ge's expression was serious. It wasn't like this earlier. It's all your fault that I've missed something important. Quote. The few visitors gathered around. They did not expect the altar to be bleeding. Should we open it to take a look? The police officer forced himself to approach the altar. He lightly pulled open the small door at the bottom of the altar. There seems to be something extra inside. The visitors used their phones to light up the place. They realized that the rag doll near the altar's entrance was already broken, and it was covered in black and red blood. Strangely enough, they saw a pair of red high heels placed at the center of the altar. When did this thing appear? The few could not understand why there would be a pair of high heels inside the altar, and they could not understand why the altar would be bleeding. Did you put it there? You were the only one guarding this place earlier. Quote. The woman with long black hair turned to look at Chen Ge, and Chen Ge was also surprised. Do you think a man like me would carry a pair of female high heels with me? Then who could it be? The police officer did not dare reach his hand into the altar. Just looking at it was scary enough. Earlier, Xiaoling's scream attracted everyone's attention, and everyone followed her. Everything happened during that time. Chen Ge's eyes scanned the other visitors. Pay more attention. That man, or rather, that ghost, is right beside us, and he is watching us constantly. Then, what should we do now? The police officer's hand hung in midair, still holding onto the altar's door. Block the altar's door. We need to find clues to leave this scenario as soon as possible. I don't believe the thing inside the altar will continue to follow us. Chen Ge's tone was serious as he gave everyone a mission. Even though this Japanese house only had a few rooms, it felt like a maze. Some of the rooms were connected, and they looked like they were separated by partitions, but in reality, the partitions were wooden doors that could be pushed and pulled. The layout of the house was very strange. The 5 bedrooms corresponded to the 5 internal organs of a human body. Chen Ge even found broken scrolls with scriptures inside each bedroom. Even though the whole building was Japanese, the scrolls were written in traditional Chinese, and most of them were rare characters. Chen Ge could only recognize metal, wood, water, fire, and earth from them. 5 bedrooms, 5 internal organs, 5 elements, the sound of the wind chime echoed in his ears. Chen Ge turned back to look. He had been curious about where the sound of the wind chime came from. This was the second time he had heard this sound. Have you realized that this house is very similar to a person lying on the ground? The police officer's attitude toward Chen Ge was very good. He was like a shadow following behind Chen Ge. Wherever Chen Ge went, he would follow. A person. Yes, the room that we entered is the person's head, the rooms on the left and right are the person's arms, the bottom is the person's legs, and the corridor in the middle is the person's body. The altar is at the end of the corridor, and it feels like it is being stepped on. The police officer's words gave Chen Ge some inspiration. If the whole building is a person, then the layout of this building is like a living person suppressing the altar. The person has stepped on the god. A glint flashed across the police officer's eyes, and he turned to shout at Chen Ge. I get it now. The person has stepped on the god. That is why there is a pair of red high heels inside the altar. Quote. The first half of the analysis was acceptable, but the second half was completely off track. Chen Ge wanted to remind the police officer, but the police officer was very excited. He shared his discovery loudly with the other visitors. When the other visitors were in heated discussion, Chen Ge stood quietly in the corridor. The theme of this room is a curse, and a curse can be a reincarnation. It starts from the first person's malice. To clear this scenario, I have to understand what has happened here. I found a camcorder inside the first bedroom. It recorded the incident of 7 young people spending the night at the old house. The camcorder did not say what happened to the 7 people, but the chance of their survival was basically 0, so there were 7 human lives. The second bedroom was filled with a large pile of clothes, and all the clothes were covered in mud like they had just been pulled out from a swamp. Compare that to what the owner of the house said in the first cubicle. The owner's parents were killed in a landslide, and the whole family was buried outside. The clothes they were wearing when they died must have been covered in mud. Quote. Therefore, the clothes inside the second bedroom probably belonged to the parents, and the reason for their car accident probably has something to do with the altar. Chen Ge scratched his chin and arranged the clues in his mind. Based on what the owner said, on the day of her parents' accident, it was raining heavily outside, and the roads in this small mountain village are hard to navigate. Based on the villagers' reaction, natural disasters like landslides are common. The owner is a local resident, so naturally, they would know this, so why did they insist on leaving? Quote. The answer was self-explanatory. Chen Ge turned back to look at the altar. They probably opened the altar, and even if they didn't, they must have discovered something very dangerous, and that was why they were forced to leave. But they did not expect that even after leaving the old house, they would still be unable to escape the shadow of death. This should be the power of the curse. Then the third bedroom. I found a toppled altar table there, and there was a black and white picture of an old man on the table. The strange thing was, the old man in the picture was taken with his back to the camera, so I couldn't see his face. Other than that, I found many children's toys inside the third bedroom, and they were all hidden under the altar table. The items inside the third cubicle reminded me of the story that the man in the camcorder told me. On the day of the old man's burial, Xiao Sun's son opened the altar and then disappeared. If Xiao Sun's son is also dead, then this is another 2 human lives. There is one similarity between all these cases, and that is that all the victims probably opened the altar. The first 3 bedrooms contained the deceased's belongings, but starting from the 4th bedroom, the situation inside changed. I found traces of fire in the 4th bedroom. The walls of the bedroom were blackened, and everything inside the room was burned. Who burned that room? And why would they burn everything inside the bedroom? Quote. Unable to figure it out, Chen Ge temporarily skipped the question. Putting aside the 4th bedroom, the 5th bedroom is also very strange. This room should be a woman's room. There is a mirror on the wall, and the closet is filled with all kinds of beautiful traditional clothes. There are also some makeup boxes. The owner of the room should be a young woman, but why would there be a black and white picture of an old lady on the other side of the room? The 5th bedroom gives off a sense of separation, and the strangest thing is, the old lady's black and white picture is facing the room. It feels like she is smiling at the new clothes inside the room. The old man's black and white picture in the 3rd bedroom was taken with his back facing the camera, but the old lady's black and white picture was taken with her face facing the camera. Why is that? What happened in this big family? Quote. As Chen Ge was thinking, the child's voice suddenly appeared again. A butterfly that has lost its wings will feel pain, but why would they tear off the butterfly's wings? The sudden appearance of this ethereal voice gave Chen Ge a fright. Perhaps they are jealous of the butterfly's beauty. Some ugly people like to destroy things that are prettier than themselves, like that will make them prettier. Ugly people. Grandma is not ugly, the child seemed to be mumbling to himself. Grandma. She tore off the butterfly's wings. Quote. Yes. The child did not sound happy. You must be very lonely here, right? Can I be your friend? Chen Ge tried to slow down his speech. I'm with Grandpa. He won't allow me to wander around. He is afraid that Grandma will know about my existence, so he has me hide in the room. There was a trace of innocence in the child's voice. He was like a blank piece of paper. In other words, the scariest thing in this house is Grandma. Chen Ge slowly raised his hand. He wanted to confirm something. A chill came from his fingertips. There was indeed something standing next to him, but it was not a projection. Can you bring me to meet your grandpa? Before Chen Ge could wait for the child to answer, he heard the wind chime again. This was the 3rd time the wind chime had rung. Grandma is here. It's time for me to go back. The boy's voice faded. Chen Ge used yin-yang vision to look behind him, and he saw a child about 4 or 5 running into the 3rd bedroom. He was about to chase after him when he felt the wooden walls on both sides of the corridor shake. A giant spider larger than an adult crawled out from the room that was covered in talismans. Screams came from everywhere, and the spider crawled on the walls and ceiling. Her arms were like a human's, and she had a withered human head. Is this a projection? The monster was so realistic that even Chen Ge's scalp went numb. No wonder this is hellish difficulty. This thing is not only scary, but it can also cause physical discomfort. The spider seemed to have its eyes on Chen Ge, and it crawled toward Chen Ge. Seeing this, Chen Ge led the spider to meet up with his teammates. Don't stand in the corridor. Run. Quote. If it was any other projection, Chen Ge would have ignored it, but this spider projection was too scary. Chen Ge did not want to have any close contact with it. When the other visitors saw the spider crawl out from the room, the accumulated fear was ignited, and the whole scenario was filled with their screams. Some of them were so scared that they froze in the corridor. Get inside the room, hide inside the room. Regardless of whether it was useful or not, Chen Ge hid inside the 3rd bedroom. The police officer and the girl called Xiaoling followed closely behind him. Close the door. The door could not be locked, so Chen Ge and the police officer used their backs to push against the door. The corridor slowly quieted down, and all the visitors hid inside the room. That should be a projection. If a real spider crawled, there would be a sound, and there would be traces left on the wall. Chen Ge signaled for the police officer to guard the door while he turned to look at the altar in the middle of the room. Earlier, the child ran into this room. Chen Ge was certain that the boy was not a projection but a lingering spirit. A lingering spirit has to be attached to something. Even in a place with heavy yin energy, it can't be separated from that object for long. Bending down, Chen Ge looked at the pile of toys under the altar. Is the boy attached to the toys? He inspected the toys closely. He placed each toy into his backpack and then took them out again. Throughout the process, he did not find anything out of place. His inspection method was unique and effective. If there was a lingering spirit attached to the toy, it would be afraid. If it's not inside the toys, then where would it be? Chen Ge's eyes moved up to look at the picture on the altar. Originally, the picture frame had fallen to the ground, but when he entered the room, he had rearranged the frame on the altar. The old man in the frame was facing away from Chen Ge. After staring at him for a long time, it felt like he would turn around at any moment. Pictures can easily be used as objects of possession by spirits and spirits. The key is this black and white picture belongs to the old man who passed away, just as Chen Ge said that, he saw a child's head poke out from the old man's side, and then the child was pushed back by the old man's hand. Everything happened so fast that it was like an illusion. Staring at the picture, Chen Ge's pupils narrowed. I think I understand why the old man's picture looks like this. There were two obsessions hidden in this black and white photo. One was an old man, and the other was a child. The old man had his back exposed. In fact, he was protecting the child. The child was hiding in his arms. Xiao Sun's son opened the altar. To prevent him from being taken away by the monster inside, the old man who passed away that day has been protecting him. Chen Ge walked to the corner of the room with the picture frame. He whispered to the picture, "How did you end up inside this haunted house?" The story in the DV was a script written by the central computer, but the old man and Xiao Sun were real ghosts. Even though they looked so weak that any red specter could kill them, the fact that they were there proved many problems. I have my own principles. If you tell me the truth, I will ensure your safety in the future. Chen Ge stared at the black and white photo, but there was nothing unusual about it. What are you looking at? Is there something wrong with this picture? Xiao Ling, who had been scared earlier, walked over. She had wanted to leave earlier, but she had been stopped by the other girl. She was in a bad state. It does look weird. Who would take a black and white picture with their back facing the camera? Chen Ge's voice returned to normal. This picture doesn't look like a prop made by the haunted house. It's one of the old props that the manager found in eastern Zhejiang. The girl leaned against the wall, and her face was pale. You'd better put that thing down. I hear this thing is very unlucky. Xiao Ling kept holding her arm. She had given up and wanted to leave as soon as possible. I knew it. Chen Ge glanced at Xiao Ling. Why have you been holding your arm? You might not believe me, but when I opened the cupboard earlier, I saw someone hiding inside it. It was him who dragged me into the hidden room that was covered in talismans. Xiao Ling let go, and Chen Ge saw a shallow bloody handprint on Xiao Ling's arm. He should be one of the haunted house's workers. He's not an actor, really. Xiao Ling rubbed her arm like she was traumatized. You didn't see it, so you think it's okay. I'm sure he's not an actor. He's really scary. Damn it. Why can't I get rid of this blood? Her arm was already red, but the handprint was still there. In fact, the color had darkened. Stop rubbing. You won't be able to get rid of it. Chen Ge stared at Xiao Ling. You seem to know this haunted house very well. Have you visited this haunted house before? Xiao Ling held her arm and glanced at the police officer blocking the door. She did not say anything. Or perhaps your friend or relative works here, and you've overheard some information? Chen Ge even came up with an excuse for her. My livestream hasn't been unblocked, and there are no cameras in this room, so no one will know what you say to me. Think about it. The person who can help you now is me. Xiao Ling was finally convinced by Chen Ge. She held her head. I told you, something bad will happen. What happened? I have a friend who is in charge of the props. She knows some inside information. When the haunted house was built, the upper management of the theme park had a disagreement. Some thought the haunted house was unnecessary, and others thought they should not give other theme parks the chance to take advantage of the loophole. Then, when the haunted house was ready, they had another disagreement. Some thought there was no need to build a physical haunted house and just use holographic projection, and the other insisted on restoring the sense of realism. They even found various old objects from eastern Zhejiang that were related to folklore. These old objects were here before the haunted house was even built. Chen Ge felt like something was wrong. Some people at the futuristic theme park did it like they were purposely building a haunted house to store these old objects. Was there a problem with one of the people in charge of the futuristic theme park? Chen Ge had interacted with the shadow from eastern Zhejiang before. The man was shameless and would do anything to achieve his goal. Liwan City, which the shadow was responsible for, was just one of the ghost fetus's backups. Instead of saying that these old objects are used to decorate the haunted house, it is more accurate to say that several scenarios in the haunted house are custom-made for these old objects. The designers used the central computer's database to generate the scenario, and this scenario includes these old objects and perfectly blended them into the whole scenario. Xiao Ling voiced out her anxiety. They adapted real ghost stories into scenarios and placed the strange objects from the ghost stories into the haunted house. My friend sometimes works late, and she often hears strange noises coming from the scenario at night. She reports this to her superior, but the superior says that it will attract more visitors. Cough cough. Xiao Ling was at the key point when the police officer suddenly coughed, and Xiao Ling immediately shut her mouth. Don't be afraid, I will ask you one last question. Chen Ge looked into Xiao Ling's eyes. What old objects from eastern Zhejiang are in this scenario? 2 black and white pictures, a wind chime, and the altar. The situation at the futuristic theme park was more serious than Chen Ge had expected. He had thought that the people had just stuffed some old objects into the haunted house, but through their conversation, he realized that the people did not just stuff the old objects into the haunted house but used the haunted house to create a home for the old objects. They merged the objects with real ghost stories into the haunted house, and the lingering spirits attached to the objects were reborn inside the haunted house. The key problem was that their haunted house was different from Chen Ge's haunted house. The spirits attached to the old objects were uncontrollable, and they could easily harm the visitors. The lingering spirits were formless. After the visitors visited, they would not notice the things on them for a short period of time. They might only feel uncomfortable after a long time. You are so irresponsible toward the visitors. Chen Ge wanted to meet the manager of the futuristic theme park. There had to be something wrong with that person. Xiao Ling's friend probably said that because of her sensitive personality. You have to understand that when people are under high stress, they might start to hallucinate. The police officer was afraid that Chen Ge would misunderstand. My friend is telling the truth, but no one cares. Everyone knows that there are no ghosts in this world. But the key is, how are you going to explain the things that she saw? Xiao Ling started to argue with the police officer. Chen Ge leaned against the wall and watched with interest. Before he came, he had guessed that the futuristic theme park would hire actors to pretend to be visitors, but he did not expect this group of actors to be so unprofessional. Perhaps combining 40 hellish scenarios at once was too much, and it had crushed their psychological defense. Perhaps the reincarnation haunted house had been built too hastily, and the employees knew about the hidden dangers. In any case, many reasons had led to this situation. The traitor had caused an internal conflict, and the visitors had become the helmsman. Stop arguing. We're all here to visit. If you don't want to give up now, we'd better stick together. Chen Ge's voice was especially pleasant at that moment. His presence was like a ray of light, one that could always bring warmth to people and give them a sense of security. Xiao Ling ignored the police officer and turned her face to the side. We're all on the same side. Don't get upset over such a small matter. Chen Ge comforted Xiao Ling and went straight to the point. Does your friend know the story behind these old objects? Where did you get these items, especially the shrine? I found it in a village next to the dam in eastern Zhejiang. The scenery there is very good, but the place is a bit isolated, and the locals are not very friendly to outsiders. Did the villagers say anything when we were collecting the things? Chen Ge did not care about the other things, but the altar was indeed problematic. It was the source of the curse. There are very few people living in that village, and most of them are old people. After my friend explained the purpose of his visit, they immediately chased him out. Later, my friend's leader gave a young man in the village 200 yuan, and the other party secretly brought us in when it was dark. Xiao Ling recalled many things. The village is not big, and most of the houses are empty. The old home that the shrine is kept is at the back of the village. The home is the biggest home in the village, and it was abandoned many years ago. The young man who brought us into the village said that many bad things have happened to this home. Several decades ago, the owner of the home married the daughter of a rich family. Even though the daughter was very ugly, her family was rich, and she lived a happy life. Then the daughter got pregnant, and they hired a maid from another place, but strangely enough, after the maid entered their home, she never came out again. At first, the villagers didn't take it to heart. After all, the couple was very nice. What really disturbed them was a few weeks later, when a thief climbed over the wall and entered their house. The thief was so scared that he went crazy. No one knew what the thief saw inside the home. The reason given by the owner was that he was too flustered when he saw the thief, and he accidentally hit the thief on the head with a wooden stick, knocking him out of his mind. At that time, things were chaotic. The owner of the home used his connections, so no one pursued the matter. But rumors started to appear in the village. It was said that when the wife was pregnant, the owner of the home had an affair with the maid. In her anger, the wife killed the maid and buried the body in the yard. There are also people who say that the foreign maid is actually the mistress of the owner of the house. It was the wife of the owner of the house who tricked her into coming here because she was jealous of the woman's beauty. She wanted to swap her face with the woman. No one knew the truth. A few months after the maid's death, the wife became half mad. She often cursed at the mirror and the wall in the middle of the night. Later, the owner hired a half-god, and the man built this shrine inside the old home. A few years later, the wife of the owner of the house passed away. He did good deeds and raised his 4 children by himself. The villagers slowly forgot about this until the day of the owner's burial. His son, Xiao's son, was naughty and opened the shrine. The weather was sunny that day, but in the afternoon, the wind started to blow. Dark clouds covered the sky, and it started to rain heavily. The time of burial had been set, and it couldn't be changed. The family braved the heavy rain and followed the rules of the village. When the owner lifted the coffin, the 4 pallbearers couldn't lift it. It felt like there were several people lying inside. The family didn't know the reason, so they spent a lot of money to hire 8 pallbearers to bury the owner. But when they got home, they realized something was wrong. The old man's portrait was facing away from everyone, and the old man's favorite son, Xiao's son, had disappeared. The family searched for several days, but they couldn't find Xiao's son. They couldn't find his body, and someone said that his son, Xiao's son, had drowned by the river. The family felt like the house was filled with bad luck, so they sold it at a very low price. They thought that would help them escape the bad luck, but my friend heard from the villagers that the whole family didn't end well. The bad luck didn't end when the family moved away. The new family was swept into the dam with their car due to the landslide. Only the eldest son, who was studying away from the city, escaped. The eldest son inherited the old house. One summer, he invited his friends to visit. That night, it was raining heavily, just like the day of the old man's burial. No one knows what happened that night. They only know that the 7 people who came to play all disappeared. The old house lost its owner. The villagers all knew that the place was strange, so they didn't go there. My friend and her colleagues were the first group of people to visit in the past 5 years. You know what happened next. Under the young man's lead, they took out some of the old objects from the old house and used them to create this scenario. Xiao Ling's story was long, but the timeline was clear. It helped Chen Ge understand many things. The maid was the first person to die in this house. After she died, she cursed the old house and was sealed inside the altar by the half-immortal. The scariest ghost in this scenario is not the grandmother but the maid. The red specter on the altar is her. The old lady has been raising the 4 children for so many years, and nothing has happened. Once Xiao Sun's son opened the altar, the whole family was destroyed. Everything that happened in the old house was related to the altar. Once the altar is opened, the people present will be met with misfortune, and no one will be able to escape. Chen Ge turned to the police officer. When you played the medium difficulty last time, you're sure you didn't open the altar, right? No, the police officer shook his head. Looks like opening the altar is unique to the hellish difficulty. Chen Ge called Xiao Ling and the police officer to his side. This scenario is very unique. There are at least 4 ghosts inside, the kind and innocent Xiao Sun's son, the grandfather who wants to protect his grandson, the extremely jealous grandmother, and the scariest maid. The grandmother is sealed inside a room filled with talismans behind the cupboard. The maid is inside the altar, and the grandfather and grandson are inside this picture. These old objects are all cursed. Once you touch them, you'll be cursed as well. Chen Ge placed the old man's black and white picture inside his backpack. It should be fine if I don't touch it with my hands. I don't think there's any movement outside. How about we go out to take a look? The police officer was already afraid, and after hearing Xiao Ling's explanation, he panicked even more. You should think of a way to clear the scenario first, and then you can go out. Chen Ge arranged his thoughts. This scenario has a curse as its theme. The first curse came from the maid, and the second curse came from the grandmother. She had an extreme personality, and her heart was filled with hatred and jealousy toward the maid. After her death, her curse was added to this house. Then, the innocent people who opened the altar were filled with grievances, and this grievance was slowly twisted into a curse. In any case, everyone in this scenario has left behind a curse and hatred, forming a situation that cannot be solved. Then, what should we do? Either we solve the curse from the root, or we become part of the curse. I don't quite understand what you mean. The police officer had no idea what Chen Ge was up to. The reason why the curse continues is because of hatred. I'm already so miserable, so others must be as miserable as me, or even more miserable than me. However, if someone bears the curse and does not spread malice, but instead gives warmth and light to the people around him, then can we say that the curse has ended on him? Chen Ge's words confused the police officer and Xiao Ling. What do you mean? As long as each and every one of us can stay true to ourselves and not be disturbed by the curse, there should be a turn for the better. Chen Ge took out the scroll that he had found in the bedroom. It had the words metal, wood, water, fire, and earth written on it. 5 bedrooms, including the secret room and the main hall. This scenario has a total of 7 rooms, corresponding to 7 people. Previously, the police had said that the layout of the room was like a person stepping on a shrine. I wondered, if each of us was alone in a room, wouldn't each room be filled with people? The whole scene is like a person coming to life, suppressing the shrine. Quote. The police officer and Xiao Ling felt like Chen Ge was spouting nonsense, but there was some truth to it. It's not scary when the visitors are gathered together. The real scary thing is when they are separated. The designers will understand this. When the central computer increases the difficulty of the scenario, they will do the same. We should follow their train of thought. Even though it's dangerous, it might be the solution. Chen Ge raised the scroll in his hand. The scroll should be able to protect us, but that is the cleverness of the scenario. There are only 5 scrolls here, and the visitors will definitely be divided. Putting the scroll aside, based on what you said, someone has to stay in the secret room alone. Isn't that too unfair for that person? It's not just unfair, it's cruel. Chen Ge smiled. Therefore, I have a suggestion. The person who enters the secret room can take 1 more scroll. I can't make the decision. Let's discuss this together. The police officer pushed the door open a gap, and the big spider in the corridor had already disappeared. Hurry up, everyone, come out now. Chen Ge yelled. The key to this scenario is the wind chime. Whenever the wind chime rings, the scenario will change. When the spider appeared, it was already the 3rd time. The next time the wind chime rings, the ghost inside the shrine might come out. Quote. Chen Ge and the police officer told everyone the solution. Even though the group thought it was ridiculous, there was no better solution. If they stayed there and did nothing, the situation would only get worse. We agree with you, but who is going to go to the room with the talismans? The man with the glasses was fearless when he was with the group, but when he was alone, he was afraid. If you're willing to go, I'll be responsible for the most dangerous room. Chen Ge took out the 2 scrolls. I'm here to clear the scenario. Just don't drag me down. You still want to clear the scenario? The man with the glasses shook his head. He felt like Chen Ge was dreaming. It's fine if you're responsible for the secret room, but you can't take away the 2 scrolls. There aren't many scrolls to begin with, and if you take away 2, what about the rest of us? Okay, I'll only take 1. Chen Ge placed the scroll on the ground. Throughout the process, none of the visitors spoke up for him. The group soon split up. The police officer was responsible for the living room, and the woman with the long black hair was responsible for the bedroom next to the secret room. After everyone entered their respective rooms, the strange sound of the wind chime appeared again. Shu Yin. Chen Ge stood in the middle of the room covered in talismans. The first thing he did was communicate with Shu Yin, but he did not have Shu Yin show himself immediately. He was waiting for a chance. A red specter can leave the item of possession freely, so where will the maid hide? Chen Ge had a smile on his face as if he was talking to himself. Opening the altar has violated the taboo. Now, I've helped you separate all the people who have violated the taboo. Can you hold yourself back? When he entered the secret room for the first time, Chen Ge had noticed that there were no cameras installed in the room, so he could do whatever he wanted. Actually, when he found out that the specter inside the altar could rival the red high heels, he had made up his mind to find her. A normal specter and a red specter were two different concepts. Even if he could not bring it back to the haunted house, consuming it would greatly increase the power of Shu Yin and the headless woman. The spider's projection moved past Chen Ge and crawled out from the closet. Screams came from outside the secret room. Moments later, the scenario returned to normal. Just as the group recovered from the shock brought by the spider, a faded scent of blood permeated the air. She's here. Chen Ge held the closet door, and he heard a woman's sad singing coming from the corridor. Standing before the door, Chen Ge perked up his ears to listen. The woman's voice was very strange. She sounded like she was singing a song that had been lost in Zhujiang. Separated by a wall full of talisman papers, just by hearing the woman's voice, when he closed his eyes, he seemed to be able to see green bricks, green tiles, and colorful curtains. It was as if he had returned to the past. He took a deep breath, and his lungs were filled with the fragrance of cosmetics with hidden bitterness. It's surprisingly beautiful. This red specter is quite unique. Chen Ge perked up. My haunted house still doesn't have a worker who knows how to sing ancient songs. If she's willing, I can help her. The woman's voice was mesmerizing. She was singing in a dialect, and Chen Ge could only understand a small part of it. He had no idea whether she was singing about herself or her own character. Which room will you choose? The hidden room covered in talismans is the most dangerous. Will you come here? Chen Ge's fists tightened. At that moment, he heard the door open. The door to the bedroom outside the hidden room was opened. When the door opened, the long-haired woman who sat alone in the bedroom outside the hidden room screamed. Shu Yin. Chen Ge pulled open the hidden room's door, and he saw a thin woman in a red costume standing at the door. Her fingers pressed against the door, and there was an unresolvable hatred in her red eyes. Her body leaned against the wall, and the skin that was exposed outside the costume was covered in wounds. Be careful. Chen Ge yelled at the woman with the long black hair. He grabbed the woman's arm and used his back to block her. While he helped her block the danger, he also blocked her sight. Before she recovered from the shock, Shu Yin walked out from the hidden room that was covered in talismans and charged at the red specter who was wearing the stage costume at the door. The red high heels are guarding the altar, and Shu Yin is chasing after us. Where do you think you're going? Chen Ge used the corner of his eyes to look behind him. After Shu Yin and the red specter left, he stood up. He was about to walk out when his shirt was suddenly grabbed. Don't go over there. The woman in the costume is not an employee. It took the woman a lot of effort to say a complete sentence. Her messy long hair stuck to her face. This woman who had always disliked Chen Ge had now changed her opinion of Chen Ge. When danger struck just now, this man had recklessly stood in front of him. Putting aside business competition, there was no flaw in this person's morals. How do you know she's not an employee? Don't worry, perhaps she's just a projection. After all, this place is made from the combination of 40 hellish scenarios. Any kind of weird projection would make sense. Chen Ge ran out of the bedroom like he did not notice the change in the woman's tone. The other visitors who heard the commotion all came out, but the red specter had already disappeared from the corridor. Where have they gone? Chen Ge was not worried about the safety of Shu Yin in the red high heels. With the two of them together, they could hold off a top red specter for a long time. Now I can confirm that there is a red specter inside the haunted house, but she is in a very strange state. She's very different from the red specters I've encountered before. What was different about her, Chen Ge could not tell. All he could do now was try his best to control the red specter. The ghost is indeed hiding inside the altar. The police officer screamed to attract everyone's attention. The altar's door has been opened. The pair of red high heels has disappeared. Quote. With the help of the police, a beautiful misunderstanding was formed. All the visitors thought that the red high heels was the ghost inside this cursed scenario. They did not expect there to be another possibility. Look here. The exit. Xiaoling pointed at the back of the altar. The place was originally sealed by wooden boards, but when the ghost appeared, the wooden boards had been moved away. The cold wind buffeted the group, and a dark path appeared behind the altar. There is no door inside the cursed house, so the hidden exit should be behind the altar. The youngest man scratched his chin and tugged at the few strands of his beard. We didn't solve the puzzle, but the exit appeared on its own. Could this be a trap? When I visited this place last time, the exit was here as well, but this time, I've tried it. The wooden boards behind the altar cannot be opened. It seems to be because some conditions have not been met. The police officer was afraid that the group would not believe him, so he was the first to run to the altar. Look, these few wooden boards have a pattern on them, and they correspond to the hint on the scroll. If we arrange them in a certain order, we can rearrange these wooden boards, and then we can open this hidden door. But I've tried it before, and even if the arrangement is correct, it still cannot open. Quote. If you know the way to leave, why didn't you share it with us? Chen Ge stared at the police officer. He realized that these people were still not being honest. They kept playing tricks. Looks like you're still not desperate enough, but that's fine. When everyone realized that this was not a game but a matter of life and death, they would listen to Chen Ge and become Chen Ge's help. If Chen Ge did not come, they would have to face the risk of death while working in a scenario with a red specter. Now that Chen Ge had helped them solve this problem, they had to give something in return. Come on, it's good that we've found the exit. Let's enter the next scenario to take a look. Chen Ge carried his backpack and ran into the bedroom. He sneakily shoved the other black and white picture into his pocket. I'm still missing a wind chime. Oh well, I'll look for it the next time I come. What Chen Ge wanted was not the items but the lingering spirits on them. He had the comic. With enough time, he could remove the lingering spirits through the comic, and the items would remain. After obtaining the items, Chen Ge avoided the altar and entered the dark corridor. The mystery of this scenario has not been solved, and the exit has been opened for no reason. Is it really okay for us to just enter like this? The man with the glasses looked at the police officer. Honestly, they did not want to explore any further. It's good that we've found the exit. What? Are you afraid? Chen Ge walked ahead alone. As playmates, the others could only follow him. Seeing everyone enter the new scenario, Chen Ge revealed a satisfied smile. These visitors could provide him with clues and free labor. They could even help him verify some of his speculations. Most importantly, these visitors were witnesses, and their eyes could help clear Chen Ge of all suspicion. Even though Xu Yin and the red high heels are not here, I still have foul odor and the headless woman. My personal safety is more than enough. Outside the cursed house was a dark corridor. There was no light. Using the flashlight from the phone, one could see several wordless tombstones along the corridor like this was a mass grave. At the end of the corridor was a sign that read, Volkswagen Hotel. Pushing open the old door, there was a lot of space inside. This is the new scenario. Chen Ge was the first to enter the scenario, but he stood at the door and did not enter. After everyone entered, Chen Ge reached his hand into his backpack to flip through the comic. He silently summoned foul odor and had him repair the wooden door of the cursed house. When foul odor left, Chen Ge closed the door of the hotel. From then on, all the visitors had no way out. The sound of the door closing gave all the visitors a fright, and they all turned to look at Chen Ge. If I don't close the door, I have a feeling that something will come. To avoid being attacked from both sides, it's better to close the door. Chen Ge found a random excuse and turned to the police officer. Have you been to this scenario before? Yes, the hotel is a buffer zone for the visitors to relax. After this scenario is over, we only need to experience one more scenario to clear the scenario. Hearing that, everyone perked up. This nightmarish haunted house visit was about to end. Buffer zone. In other words, this scenario isn't scary. Chen Ge rarely saw a buffer zone built inside a haunted house. There are no ghosts in this scenario. There are 12 rooms, and one of them is hiding a murderer. We only need to avoid the murderer's pursuit and find the hidden path inside the hotel to escape. The police officer did not hide it anymore. He also wanted to leave this haunted house as soon as possible. Where was the hidden path when you were here last time? The hidden path is not fixed. Each of the 12 rooms has a hidden path, but only one room's hidden path is unlocked. This scenario depends on luck. The first door we open might lead to an unlocked hidden path, or the first door we open might lead to a murderer. The police officer shrugged. I've told you everything I know. If there's another accident, don't blame me. Medium difficulty has 12 rooms with a murderer and an unlocked secret passage. In hell difficulty, it's very likely that all the secret passages are locked, and every room has a murderer hiding in it. Chen Ge stood near the bar counter. He turned to the bespectacled man. Detective, did you get any hint? Yes, I got the message when we entered this scenario. The bespectacled man showed the message on his watch to the group. Do not open the doors carelessly. Looks like Chen Ge was right. There might be a murderer hiding in each of the 12 rooms, and that's why he told us not to open the doors carelessly. The police officer laughed dryly. If that was the case, then the clue he provided would be useless. Shish, don't say anything. Chen Ge suddenly raised his hand. With ghost ear, he heard the sound of moving footsteps and a woman's crazed laughter. The voice was very weak, and it came from underground. This hotel is not as simple as it looks on the surface. There might be several floors. No matter how scary the upper floors are, they are just the surface. The lower floors are the real tricky places. Chen Ge's voice was very low, and it made people's hair stand on end. How do you know all this? The woman with long black hair asked in a low voice. Her impression of Chen Ge had greatly changed. A haunted house that truly pursues the scariest experience will not set up a buffer in the scenario. Wave after wave of scares is the goal of the haunted house designers. Chen Ge would not tell the other visitors that even if there was a buffer zone inside a haunted house with a red specter, the buffer zone would not be as effective, so they had to be careful at all times. The information given by the police is that opening the door will lead to the secret passage, but the hint given by the detective is not to open the door. This is very contradictory. Who should we listen to now? Chen Ge then turned to the youngest man. All of us have told you our occupation, except for you. We've been together for so long, and you still don't trust us. The young man shook his head. It's not that I don't trust everyone, but my power is very important, and it can only be used once. Chen Ge did not force it. Time was limited. All the visitors started to split up to search the hotel, and they soon discovered many strange things. The hotel was the biggest scenario they had entered so far. It was divided into 3 floors. There were 2 floors above ground, and each floor had 6 rooms. There was a floor underground, but the path that led underground was locked by a steel door. There was a staircase on the left and right side of the hotel. On the surface, the corridor looked normal, but if one looked closer, they would see many marks of being smashed by blunt objects. There were nail holes on the door, and there were blood stains on the ground that had not been cleaned. Other than that, Chen Ge found many pages that looked like they were torn from detective novels. They were written in red paint with the time of the morning and the location of the person's death. The corners of the hotel were also painted with complicated symbols like the graffiti of demons. Even though the whole scenario was not as professional as Chen Ge's haunted house, it was still a good 7. The atmosphere was not bad. There is no way out. The exit should be hidden inside the room like the police said. The few visitors gathered at the bar counter again. They were discussing whether they should push the door open to try their luck. Chen Ge stood to the side and did not say anything. What are you thinking about? The police officer noticed Chen Ge's strange behavior. The clock on the wall has been moving. Chen Ge pointed at the top of the bar counter. There was an inconspicuous clock hanging on the dirty wall. Isn't it normal for the clock to be moving? The police officer was confused. Look closely. This clock is moving backward. When we entered this place, it was 3 a.m., but now it's 2:54 a.m. A clock that is moving backward. What does that mean? Quote. I don't know. Chen Ge shook his head. Let's ignore the clock for now. Earlier, you said that the secret path is hidden inside the room. If we want to leave, we have to push open the door. I've focused on the doors of the 12 guest rooms, and I realized that each of the doors has been hammered with small holes using nails. Holes. Are they for us to look inside the room through the holes? The visitors could not help but gather toward Chen Ge. Shouldn't be. The other side of the door is reinforced with a layer of wood, so we won't be able to look inside the room through the holes. Chen Ge took out his phone. The positions of the holes on each door are different. Some of them looked familiar, so I tried to connect them with a string, and I found something surprising. What is it? The holes that are hammered by nails represent the stars. Connecting all the stars on the door will form a constellation. The first door is Aries, and the second door is Taurus. These 12 doors correspond to the 12 signs of the zodiac. When the visitors heard Chen Ge's analysis, they were shocked. They felt like even though they were in the same scenario as Chen Ge, they were playing a different game. Then, what kind of hint can the 12 signs of the zodiac give us? The police officer was afraid of interrupting Chen Ge's thinking, so he lowered his voice. That's where the trouble lies. The 12 signs of the zodiac have many meanings. They are constellations, they can correspond to time, and they can be used as passwords. Chen Ge looked at his phone. The word, zoo, comes from Greek, and it originally means, zoo. The animals inside the zoo are definitely not humans. Could it be that it's warning us that the tenants behind the door are not humans? That matches the information that the detective received. Quote. Shaking his head, Chen Ge frowned. I'm not that good at puzzle solving. This level has hit my blind spot. Looking at the troubled Chen Ge, the other visitors did not dare say anything. Is there anything we can do to help? The police officer looked at Chen Ge, who was frowning in thought, and leaned over to join him. The visitors all hoped that Chen Ge would be able to lead them out. The mission given to them by the park manager had been forgotten. How was the saying again? When you are away from home, you can't just follow your orders. The 12 zodiac signs might be a code. This scenario does not rely on luck but the ability to solve puzzles. As long as we can solve the secret of the 12 zodiac signs, we'll be able to tell which room is safe and which room is hiding the murderer. After Chen Ge said that, his tone changed. Unfortunately, the central computer has a large database. The puzzles created by it are hard for me to solve with my power. So, it still depends on luck. The information that I can come up with is very little. Chen Ge showed the group the detective books that he had found. The time of death and the victim's name were scribbled on the pages with red dye. Assuming the information on the pages is real, it means that the murders will happen during these few hours, and the location will be inside this hostel. The murders that have already happened are nothing to be afraid of, but the clock on the hostel's wall runs backwards, so all the murders might happen again inside this hostel. Chen Ge raised one finger. This is a new cycle, and the time that has been reversed is the knife that hangs above our heads. The murders that have already happened are more like a warning of our death. Opening his palm, Chen Ge placed the pages on the bar counter. There are 7 pages, corresponding to the 7 of us. Each of us has a time of death, and when the time is up, the executioner will appear, and that person will die. Hearing Chen Ge's analysis, the few visitors started to panic. When we entered this place, it was 3 a.m., and now it is 2:52 a.m. The last murder on the pages happened at 2:50 a.m., and the cause of death was dismemberment by a saw. Chen Ge put the pages away. Now we have 2 choices. 1. We personally kill one of our teammates. That way, there will be 6 of us left, and the executioner who will execute the 7th won't appear. Personally kill a teammate, that's not something you can say. The man with the glasses refused. The other option is for all of you to listen to me. Chen Ge did not give the other visitors time to think. He put away the 7 pages. There is 1 minute left until 2:50 a.m. This is our last chance. Other than the guest rooms, there is nowhere else to hide, so we can only escape into the rooms. Now, all of you stand on the left staircase, and I will open the first door on the right staircase. After opening the door, there are only 2 possibilities. If there's a murderer inside the door, I'll run over to meet up with you. If we keep our distance from the murderer, he won't be able to do anything to us. If there aren't any homicidal maniacs in the sect, then run over here immediately and meet up with me. We'll hide in that room first and wait until the first execution time is over. Quote. All right, I agree. The bespectacled man and the youngest boy spoke decisively. Chen Ge had taken on all the risks and was the person closest to the danger. They had no reason to object. Time was limited, so both parties moved immediately. The 6 visitors stood at the left stairwell, watching Chen Ge. Chen Ge opened the door to the right stairwell alone. No one. Chen Ge waved at the group, and all the visitors ran over. After they all entered the guest room, the sound of a door opening echoed down the quiet corridor. The murderer is coming out. The 6 visitors all held their breath. Only Chen Ge walked to the door alone. With his ghost ear, he confirmed the room where the murderer was hiding based on the sound of the door opening. As if to scare the visitors, heavy footsteps and the sound of a chainsaw came from the end of the corridor. The person did not seem to know where the visitors were hiding and wandered aimlessly around the hotel. Then the sound disappeared into another room. He didn't return to his room. The door closed, and the visitors all sighed in relief. Chen Ge, however, thought this was weird. Is this scenario really a test of luck? The murderer only opens one door at a time, and it's up to the visitors to find the unlocked corridor first or the murderer to find the room the visitors are hiding in. No, hellish difficulty can't be that easy. Quote. Chen Ge started to study the room. There were many things in the room. There was a mannequin that was missing an arm hanging in the corner. The floor under the body could be moved, but it was locked by a large lock. Poker cards were placed on the table next to the hidden corridor. Each card had an English letter written on it, and it appeared to be a puzzle. There was a document placed inside the wooden table's drawer. The word, will, was written on the cover, but when one opened it, they realized that the will only had one sentence: if I die, it will not be suicide. The room was not big, but it was decorated as a puzzle room. Should we stay here to find the truth? The police officer looked at the things inside the room. Everything seemed to be related to solving the puzzle. Searching for the truth is the job of the police. I'm just a volunteer. Chen Ge looked at the time. This scenario required solving the puzzle, and it would take up a lot of time, but he did not plan to waste any more time. This visit had indeed taught him many things, and it had given him a better understanding of the power of the futuristic theme park. It was impressive that they could do so well in a field that they were not familiar with. Only by facing the opponent head-on would there be a chance to surpass them. This was one of Chen Ge's strengths. He would never underestimate anyone. Time to relax is over. Let's get to work. The few visitors did not notice the change that had happened to Chen Ge. They continued to follow behind Chen Ge. This room is marked as safe. Now, we can go and open the other door and follow what I said earlier. Chen Ge had all the visitors run to the left corridor while he stood on the right. After everyone was in position, he reached his hand into his backpack to flip through the comic. Finally, there's no need to hide anymore. The reason Chen Ge had all the visitors run to the left while he stood on the right was because the corridor on the right was closer to the hotel door. The visitors would not be able to see what was happening on this side of the corridor, and Chen Ge would be able to communicate with the foul odor red specter at the door in the visitor's blind spot. The exit has been sealed. It's time to make him despair. The hotel door was already open. Chen Ge nodded at foul odor with a smile. A pungent stench floated in the air. Everyone could hear the sound of water dripping. Blood splashed on the floor, and it left a ghastly trail behind it. The red specter foul odor red specter released his presence without restraint. Soon, everyone realized that something was wrong, and they all turned to stare at the hotel counter. Several seconds later, a fat monster wearing a red shirt walked out from the counter. What is that? Xiao Ling screamed, and all the visitors' heart jumped. Chen Ge, behind you. Look behind you. Quote. Chen Ge, who had just walked out from the visitor's blind spot, lifted his head, and he saw the monster. His face blanched instantly, and he gritted his teeth and started to run. Run. He was fast, but he could not outrun the monster behind him. He had nowhere to run. In the end, before the other visitors' eyes, he pushed open one of the doors and hid inside it. At that moment, something even scarier happened. The scary monster followed him into the room. Then, two screams came from inside the room. One came from Chen Ge, and the other belonged to a stranger. Before the visitors could figure out what was happening, the scary monster had already run out and charged at them. What is this? The visitors scattered, and no one noticed that the door to the room that Chen Ge had run into earlier was slowly closing. This is going better than I expected. Chen Ge looked at the unconscious actor and smiled like a child. He memorized the room that the murderer was hiding in and led Foul Odor's red specter to rush in. The actor, who wanted to scare the visitors, heard the door open, and he rushed in excitedly. However, before he could pose, he saw Foul Odor's red specter standing behind Chen Ge. The scream of pain came from him. To fool the other visitors, Chen Ge cooperated and screamed as well. The two collapsed to the ground, but the actor was really unconscious, and Chen Ge used this opportunity to look around the room. After confirming that there were no surveillance cameras, he stood up and closed the door. The surveillance cameras at the futuristic theme park are everywhere. I can't do anything I want, but things are different now. Chen Ge took off his jacket and took out the comic from his backpack. Then he removed the killer's jacket and mask and put them on himself. Let me show you how to act as a murderer. Putting away the comic and recorder, Chen Ge helped the actor put his own jacket on him. Then he dropped the empty backpack next to the actor's head and took off his watch to help the actor put it on. After everything was ready, Chen Ge picked up the electric saw and kicked the door open. The corner of his eyes scanned the surveillance in the corner. Chen Ge was standing next to the surveillance with the saw. After the visitors realize that their escape route has been cut off, they might choose to retreat. I need to move as soon as possible. The saw scraped against the wall. This saw had been modified. It was twice the size of a normal saw. It was very heavy, and it made a loud noise when it was started. However, all the saw blades had been replaced. The haunted house probably did not want to hurt the visitors. The bloody jacket covered the body, and the metal and bone headgear covered the head. Outsiders could only see a pair of cold and emotionless eyes. The visitors have already scattered due to Foul Odor's pursuit. I've hinted to them that the first room that was opened was the safest. Could there be a lucky person hiding there now? The metal clashed with the wall, and Death's footsteps approached. Walking past the rooms that represented the 12 zodiac signs, Chen Ge stopped before a door. The bloody fingers pushed the door open, and the cold eyes scanned the room. The body that was missing an arm hung above the hidden path, the poker cards were scattered on the table, and there was a shoe print on the will. There was no one in the room. Chen Ge turned on the record button on his phone and walked out the door. When he reached the door, he closed it and then silently returned to the armoire. Holding his breath, he raised the saw above his head. Several seconds later, a woman's voice came out from inside the armoire. He's left, right? I think so. I'll go out to take a look. It's too crowded here. Creak. The door of the armoire was slowly pushed open, and the light changed. The screeching sound of the saw echoed above his head, and a pair of cold eyes looked like a beast that had found its prey. Ah! Xiao Ling kept retreating until her body bumped into the chair and table. What's wrong with you? The other girl inside the armoire screamed. Then she heard the armoire being knocked by something heavy. She lost her footing and fell to the ground. She did not expect the murderer to be standing outside the armoire. Her eyes were filled with fear, but several seconds later, she recovered some calmness. We're on the same side. We're on the same side. I'm Li Li, and she's Zhang Ling. You didn't receive the notice, right? Both of us came in with a tourist. This is my employee. Her slender arms trembled as she raised the employee ID. Then, the ID was sent flying by a huge force. The heavy saw smashed into the closet, and the woman's face was twisted by fear amidst the flying sawdust. Die! A hysterical voice came from under the helmet made of metal and bones. The cold eyes did not have the slightest emotion that a living person should have. Those were a pair of dead eyes. Yin-yang vision. Screams came from inside the house. The heavy saw swung over her head. Xiao Ling, who had reached her limit, ran out the door with all her might. Zhang Ling, Li Li, who was left alone, sat on the ground. She did not even have the strength to stand up. We are all your colleagues. Except for that Chen Ge, all of us are employees. Really? Li Li was still screaming when the sound of blood dripping suddenly echoed in the room. The thick smell of blood was like a pair of invisible hands slowly strangling Li Li's neck. Blood dripped from Chen Ge's back. He held the saw with one hand, and the other reached behind him to grab his black hair. You. Chen Ge pulled his hand back from behind him, and there was a woman's head in his palm. Blood dripped, and her eyes were wide open. She died with a grievance. Chen Ge tossed the head before Li Li. She could see clearly that the lips of the woman's head were still moving. It's not like this. It's not like this. Quote. Her body seemed to be convulsing. Li Li screamed. Her eyes slowly turned white, and she collapsed to the ground. Chen Ge turned off the recording on his phone. He picked up the headless woman's head and used the saw to swipe at his red spectre. He held the headless woman's head in one hand and the saw in the other as he walked out of the room with heavy steps. Everyone in the hotel heard Li Li scream. Other than the few visitors who were being chased by foul odor, the rest of the people turned to look at them. They wanted to know what was happening inside the room. The screams soon stopped. When Chen Ge walked out of the room, everyone had an answer in their hearts. Hugging the head and the saw dripping blood, the man had really lost his mind. The six of you, don't even think about running. Chen Ge hugged the head and looked down the corridor. The youngest boy was dragging the limp Xiaoling down the stairs, and the man with the glasses was following them. When Xiaoling saw Chen Ge walk out of the room covered in blood, she had already lost her mind. She had thought of 100 possibilities, but this was the only one that she did not dare consider. The haunted house designer can see the situation inside the room through the camera. Even if they didn't see it, these few employees would have asked them for help. Unfortunately, I've already asked foul odor to seal off their escape route. If they don't want to die, they will have to run forward. The merging of the scenario is controlled by the central computer, but the haunted house designer should have a way to interfere. They will definitely open up a path for the employees to pass through, and that will allow me to follow them. Chen Ge looked at the camera. Now, I'm your employee, and my ghost is also the ghost that you brought from the old objects at the futuristic theme park. Are you all ready to face the consequences of your actions? Even if he allowed the few people to run first, even if he had to carry the heavy saw, Chen Ge was confident that he could catch up to them. His confidence in stamina came from the many trial missions that the black phone had completed. He moved faster and faster. The saw knocked against the wall, and Chen Ge started to run at full speed. The feeling of being chased could drive someone crazy. The man with the glasses let go of Xiaoling's hand and chose to run on his own. After some hesitation, the young man put down Xiaoling and chased after the man with the glasses. Such a shame. Chen Ge dragged the saw closer to Xiaoling. The heavy smell of blood caused Xiaoling to feel dizzy. Her vision blurred before it stopped at the head of the woman behind Chen Ge. This can't be real. Closing Xiaoling's eyes, Chen Ge was about to chase after the man with the glasses and the young man. The door next to him was suddenly pushed open, and a monster with a butcher's mask and a body covered in scars stood at the door, waving the cleaver. Scream as hard as you can. Struggle as hard as you can. The heart of fear is the most delicious to eat. Quote. Before he finished, he saw Chen Ge, who was holding the saw, and Xiaoling, who had fainted. Brother Yi. Why are you still here? It's 2:40 a.m., it's my turn. The butcher's eyes finally saw the blood on the saw and the rolling head. He stood where he was for a few seconds before silently closing the door. You go on with your business. My watch seems to be several minutes faster. Bang! The door was kicked open, and the saw roared. The stench of blood rushed into the room like waves. What are you doing? Help me. Quote. Chen Ge, who was dragging the saw, slowly walked out from the room. The room was completely silent. Blood slid down the saw's blade, and his pair of cold and scary eyes turned to the first floor. The youngest boy took out a set of keys from his pocket. He grabbed the bespectacled man, and the two of them ran to the steel door that led underground. Why would he have the keys? Is it because of the man's occupation? No, the man should be a cheater. He probably has the keys and hints. No wonder he is so calm. Quote. From the beginning, the young man was different from the other visitors. He should have been given an important task by the manager to interfere with Chen Ge when he was doing his mission. The 6 visitors had their own role to play. The manager's plan was good, but they did not expect there would be visitors like this. They had made a fundamental mistake. When Chen Ge reached the bottom floor, foul odor had just entered the hostel from the front door. The police officer and the woman with the long hair had fainted from fear. The two of them ran out of the hostel, planning to return the way they had come, but the way back was blocked. There was no response. In the end, they fainted next to the tombstone in the corridor. I'll go chase after them. You'll guard the back. There should be other actors hiding in this scenario. Just try to knock them out. The steel door that led underground was already open. The bespectacled man and the youngest boy rushed into the darkness. The exit is indeed hidden underground. Actually, when he entered this scenario, Chen Ge had already guessed that the hidden path on the surface was a disguise. Even if he could find the key, he would not be able to escape. To clear this scenario, he had to find the key that led underground. From the moment the door was pushed open, this scenario was accompanied by many choices. The right choice would help him clear the scenario, and the wrong choice would lead to his death. There was another meaning to the zodiac sign. It was the name of a murderer who had not been caught yet. This scenario was based on mystery solving and murder, but if the visitors thought that the murderers were just crazed murderers hiding inside the room, they would be sorely mistaken. The real killer here was the inverted clock on the wall. The murder that had already happened could not be changed. Time was the killer that hid the deepest. If Chen Ge was not in a hurry to leave, he would definitely experience it and decipher all the secrets in the room. Unfortunately, he did not have the time. A normal visitor could only visit 3 to 4 scenarios at once, but Chen Ge had combined 40 scenarios in one go. To challenge so many scenarios in the given time, he had to take a path that no one else had taken before. Run as fast as you can. I will always be behind you. The electric saw roared. Chen Ge, who was holding the human head in his arms, dragged the heavy saw and rushed forward at full speed. The upper 2 floors of the hotel were guest rooms, and the lower floors were prisons, where several skeletons were imprisoned. He's coming, the bespectacled man shouted, his face full of sweat. He and the youngest boy stood in the deepest part of the cell. They wanted to open one of the cell doors. Hurry up, he's coming, they're coming. Quote, I know. Don't rush me. Don't rush me. The youngest boy grabbed the keys with both hands. His arms were trembling, but the more anxious he was, the more he couldn't find the corresponding key. The smell of blood drifted to the tip of his nose, and the sound of wailing reached his ears. It symbolized that the footsteps of death were gradually approaching. Not this one. Not this one either. The boy grabbed the key and shoved it into the keyhole. His eyes were bloodshot. The modified saw scraped against the bars of the cell, and the crisp sound of metal clashing was like the prelude to the symphony of fate. Chen Ge slowed down. Under the helmet made from metal and bones, there was a cold gaze. Caw! It's open. The boy screamed excitedly. He grabbed the bespectacled man and ran into the last cell. The iron door slammed against the wall, and the shaking door was grabbed by a hand. Chen Ge looked into the cell. Behind the closet was a staircase that led upward. Not bad, but you're too slow. I have to wait for you. Chen Ge chased after them with the electric saw. At the top of the wooden stairs was a changing room. The rows of iron cupboards were covered in red handprints. A public bathhouse. Before he moved forward, he heard the sound of the closet creaking. It sounded like the thing inside was about to come out. The strange sound grew louder and louder until it covered the sound of his footsteps. When Chen Ge moved forward, the door of a closet next to him suddenly opened, and a human hand fell out. A prop. To not lose sight of the bespectacled man, Chen Ge ignored these things. After running out of the changing room, Chen Ge saw a barber working on someone's head. The man's back was facing Chen Ge, and from the mirror before the barber, Chen Ge could see the man's and the customer's faces. Just from the mirror, the barber should have been played by a real person, but Chen Ge soon noticed that something was wrong. When a normal visitor walked in, the barber would have no problem maintaining his composure, but now that Chen Ge was wearing the costume of a chainsaw killer, the man's attitude did not even change. That was strange. Customer, would you like a haircut? It'll be your turn soon. Come sit down and wait. A middle-aged man's voice came from the barber. The barber in the mirror was seriously cutting the customer's hair, but in real life, the barber's hands and shoulders did not move. He kept his head lowered, and Chen Ge had no idea what he was doing. Chen Ge ignored the man, he just wanted to catch up to the bespectacled man. Holding the saw, Chen Ge walked directly toward the barber. The exit of the male bathhouse was right next to the barber. Perhaps hearing the footsteps, the barber who was facing away from Chen Ge spoke again. "Customer, there's no need to hurry. I'll be done soon." Chen Ge ignored the man completely. When he was about to reach the exit, the barber, who had been facing away from Chen Ge, suddenly reached out an arm. His voice turned dark and suppressed, and there was a kind of madness in it. "Didn't I tell you to wait? Didn't I already tell you? I'm currently shaving his head." Quote. The barber, who was facing away from Chen Ge, whipped around. His palms were covered in blood, and his hands were holding the male head. The barber's face was covered in scars, and his expression was terrifying. He suddenly turned around, and the hand holding the head reached toward Chen Ge's face. His fingertips touched the mask made from metal and bone, and the head in his palm rolled to the ground. The cold touch surprised the barber. He was too immersed in his role to react. He continued to stare at Chen Ge with that crazed expression. "You are." The heavy scent of blood drifted out from behind Chen Ge. He slowly bent down to pick up the rolling head. Then he grabbed the head and shoved it into the barber's arms. "Did you just cut off this man's head?" The eerie voice came from under the mask. The pair of dead eyes stared at the barber. "Or this woman's head?" A woman's head." The hairdresser felt a chill run down his spine and into his brain. He looked to the side and saw a bleeding woman's head next to him. Her eyes were open, and her red lips moved like she was smiling. "Ah!" The hairdresser sat on the fake customer. The chair slid, and he knocked into the table. The installed equipment seemed to have been touched, and the projection on the mirror disappeared. The hairdresser fainted, perhaps from the pain or fear. Their mental fortitude needs to be improved. The futuristic theme park relies too much on technology and has completely neglected the training of their employees. These employees should be the ones responsible for other entertainment facilities before they were temporarily transferred here. Not everyone could become a haunted house worker. There was a huge difference between an experienced worker and a newbie. For example, the ability to deal with unexpected situations. Chen Ge walked out from the male bathhouse. There were two paths, one leading to the entrance of the female bathhouse, and the other leading to the entrance of the bathhouse. The footprints on the ground indicate that they ran toward the entrance of the male bathhouse and the female bathhouse. Have these two learned their lesson? They've learned to scheme now. Upon closer inspection, Chen Ge noticed something from the direction of the footprints. They first went to the entrance of the bathhouse, but after realizing that they could not escape, they turned into the female bathhouse. If the youngest boy is the cheater, and he has the keys to all the scenarios, why can't he leave? Chen Ge was reminded of what the police officer had said earlier. The hostile scenario was a buffer zone. After clearing the hostile and another scenario, they would be able to leave the haunted house. At the time, the police officer said it was medium difficulty, but the scenario I'm challenging is a combination of more than 40 hellish scenarios. In other words, the original exit might not be able to leave. Chen Ge had too little information. He did not know how the central computer worked, and he did not know whether the combination of more than 40 scenarios would affect the central computer. It would be great if I can't leave. Chen Ge entered the female bathhouse with the electric saw. There were water and blood stains on the ground, and he could see the footprints of the man with the glasses and the other boy clearly. Where will they hide? The bathhouse was very shabby, and each shower was blocked by a partition, forming a small cubicle. Trying to push open the door of one of the cubicles, Chen Ge saw that the stained wall was filled with malicious words written in blood. He was not interested in these things and opened all the cubicles around him. When he walked to the middle of the bathhouse, he suddenly heard the sound of running water. It seemed that someone was taking a bath. Not long after the sound of flowing water was heard, a woman's voice came from the single room in the corner that was surrounded by partitions. "Is anyone there?" The woman's voice was very pleasant to listen to. There was a hint of pity and fear in her mellow voice. Just listening to her voice, one would subconsciously think of a lovely figure from the back. Dragging the chainsaw, Chen Ge opened the cubicle doors one after another, but he did not see the bespectacled man or the other boy. "Can you do me a favor?" After opening several cubicles, there were only 4 that remained unopened. One of them was the cubicle that the woman was in. If the bespectacled man was here, he would have told the other employees that someone has gone crazy. The hairdresser and the woman in the cubicle would have escaped already. They would not stay here like idiots. Chen Ge prepared to leave, but then he thought of something else. I cannot underestimate the evil of human nature. What if the 2B** stars are purposely hiding this from their colleagues and using them to delay me? For the sake of safety, Chen Ge still walked to the cubicle. Hearing the approaching footsteps, the woman's voice appeared again. Can you lend me some shampoo? I seem to have forgotten to bring it. The woman's voice was weak and pitiful, and it was hard to say no. Borrow something. Chen Ge was reminded of a ghost story related to the bathhouse. A woman was killed in the bathhouse, and her body was mutilated. Later, whenever the bathhouse was about to close at night, the sound of a woman borrowing things could be heard. First it was to borrow shampoo and towels, and then it was to borrow the part of her body that was missing. My hair is dirty. I've washed it for a long time, but it just won't get clean. The cubicle door was pushed open a gap, and a snow-white, slender arm reached out from the cubicle. Her fingers gently placed on the door and slowly slid down. Her white and tender fingertips rubbed against the rough wooden surface. My clothes are all outside. I can't get them myself now. Can you help me? Of course, I can help you, but I don't think your hair will be clean anymore. How about I borrow your head? That way, we won't have to worry about it anymore. When the woman pulled back her arm, Chen Ge tossed the headless woman's head into the cubicle. Then he leaned against the cubicle door. The scream echoed, and the door behind him shook violently. Chen Ge was thinking about something else. The footprints of the bespectacled man appeared inside the bathhouse, and then he walked down the corridor between the male and female bathhouses before disappearing into the female bathhouse. The way out has to be here. They didn't inform the other colleagues. Perhaps they were in too much of a hurry to escape, or perhaps they did it on purpose. Quote. His mind was meticulous, his 5 senses were sharp, his stamina was better than a normal person's, and he had a talent for observing details. It was because of these advantages that the murderer that Chen Ge played could give the visitors an indescribable feeling of suffocation. You won't be able to escape. The movement inside the cubicle quieted down. Chen Ge opened the door and picked up the headless woman's head. He glanced at the female actor who was wearing multiple prosthetics. Even though I've been banned before during my livestream, the reason for the ban has nothing to do with pornography. This is a good haunted house, so you'll have to follow the right path like me. Chen Ge came to the cubicle where the footprints had disappeared. The shower had fallen to the ground, and many curses were written in blood on the wooden wall. Some of the words were darker, and they were all related to the human body. Knocking on the wooden wall behind the cubicle, Chen Ge realized that the wooden boards with the blood letters could be moved. The wooden wall inside the cubicle was pieced together, and there was a gap in the middle, just like the wooden wall inside the cursed house. The clue to solve the puzzle should be inside this scenario. Chen Ge narrowed his eyes. He looked around, and an answer appeared in his heart. There are no cameras installed here. Bang! The saw smashed through the wall. Chen Ge hugged the headless woman's head and looked down the dark hospital corridor. A new scenario. His eyes scanned the sick rooms one by one before landing on the other side of the corridor, where the bespectacled man and the youngest man were preparing to make a call. Found it. Even though Chen Ge's mind was meticulous, his 5 senses were sharp, and he had a natural talent for observing details. He hated trouble. The saw roared, and Chen Ge charged forward at full speed. Hearing the sound, the bespectacled man and the other man felt that something was wrong. When they turned around, their eyes met Chen Ge's. That sense of despair and helplessness could only be experienced by being there. The two of them started to run forward with tears in their eyes. The young man had the key, so they were forced to run toward one new scenario after another. With the two leading the way, Chen Ge experienced midnight surgery, room 0, funeral marriage, death library, and many other scenarios. It was not until they entered a scenario called the old home that Chen Ge stopped chasing after the two visitors who were about to break down but started to study the scenario. From the outside, this scenario was much more normal than the others, but Chen Ge heard Shu Yin's voice here. The red specter in the stage costume escaped here. The old home did not have many decorations. It looked like it had been moved here from the mountain. After the bespectacled man and the youngest man supported each other and ran into the house, Chen Ge walked in with the saw. The other scenarios are made from wood and various modern materials, but only this scenario uses real stuff. Chen Ge communicated with the headless woman and carefully followed behind the two visitors. The old house looked quite old. The ground was covered in mottled stones, and the walls were made from green bricks. Yellow talismans were stuffed between the bricks. The house was very ordinary. There was nothing special about it, but it made people feel uncomfortable. Maybe it was because of those talismans. Pushing open the red door, a thick stench drifted out from inside the house. Yellowed paper money littered the ground, white paper was stuck to the pillars, and paper dolls hung from the ceiling. Walking further into the main hall, there was a bronze mirror in the middle of the hall. The ritual was written on the mirror, and there were pig, sheep, and cow heads in front of the mirror. There was also a bronze cauldron with 3 broken incense sticks. The pig, sheep, and cow heads are all real. Before he got close, Chen Ge smelled the weird smell from the offerings. They were already smelly, but the theme park did not seem to have any intention of replacing them. I didn't expect to see such a traditional scene at the futuristic theme park. Avoiding the bronze mirror, Chen Ge looked around. There were 24 pictures of specters hanging on the wall, and each of them was missing a part of their body. Some were missing an eye, and some were missing a leg. Why are all the specters missing parts? Is it because they're afraid that if the pictures are completed, the specters will escape from them? Quote. The pictures on the wall looked old, and they did not look like replicas. Chen Ge walked to the pictures, and the more he looked at them, the more familiar they became. They are very similar to the ones that Dr. Gao carved on the door at my haunted house. When Chong Wenyu wanted to destroy the door at the School of the Afterlife, there was a similar picture on her back. However, the difference is, the specter scrolls that Dr. Gao and Chong Wenyu took out are complete, but the scrolls here are all incomplete and have lost their charm. Quote. Holding the headless woman's head, Chen Ge asked her if she could sense anything from the pictures. The headless woman studied them for a long time and even used her blood vessels to touch the pictures, but she did not notice anything strange. The whole old manor is filled with a very uncomfortable atmosphere. I don't recognize many of the words on the funeral rites, but it doesn't feel like they're praying for peace. Chen Ge wanted to study it a little longer, but the sound of something falling came from the side hall. Picking up the chainsaw, Chen Ge pushed open the door to the side hall. There were bloodstains on the ground, and the red paper money was stuck to the ground. As soon as he entered the house, Chen Ge had a very uncomfortable feeling. It was as if his body was wrapped up by something, making it difficult for him to breathe. Something's not right. He did not continue to walk forward. Instead, he stood at the door. After a while, he vaguely heard the voice of the bespectacled man. Hurry up, that guy might be here soon. I know, but I don't think I have the key to this door. Didn't you say you can open all the doors inside the scenarios? The man with the glasses raised his voice like he was in a hurry, but he did not dare raise his voice. Before we came in, I memorized the names of all the scenarios, but I have no memory of this scenario at all. It's true, I regretted it when I came in. I have no memory of this scenario at all. The voice of the youngest man was shaking. There's no record of this scenario. Yes, you're asking me to open the door, but I don't even have the corresponding key, so how am I supposed to open it for you? That's impossible. Is there a mistake in the information? Quote. Bai Buhui personally gave me the information the day before he went to Western Zhejiang's haunted house. Do you think there's a problem? With Captain Bai's personality, there's no mistake. The bespectacled man was confused. Then, what do you think is the reason? When our haunted house was first built, part of the scenarios were handled by Qingming and director Zhang Ju. Perhaps they added this scenario in secret, the youngest man whispered. The youngest boy whispered, that director Zhang Ju is so secretive. He probably knew that our haunted house would one day be haunted by evil spirits. This time, we've been tricked. Zhang Ju. I remember now. I heard the futuristic theme park didn't plan to build a haunted house initially, but he insisted on it, and in the end, the higher-ups agreed. Quote. Yes, that's him. This man has caused us so much trouble. The two discussed softly, and their voices came from outside the side hall. They don't have the key to this scenario. The scenario of the manor isn't in the haunted house's record. Chen Ge did not chase after them directly. With ghost ear, other than the voices of the two visitors, he could also hear Shu Yin's voice and the singing of an ancient song. Shu Yin doesn't like to talk. To be able to make him speak, it means that he's run into a powerful enemy. Chen Ge did not even dare to imagine that he would run into a red specter that was as powerful as Shu Yin when he was inside a theme park that was open for business. There was a huge crowd outside, and there were tens of thousands of visitors. The two visitors are trapped inside the courtyard, and Shu Yin and the red specter should be outside the wall. Chen Ge could not help but sigh. The two visitors sure are lucky. If they have the key and open the door, they might see three red specters fighting each other. Then, it won't be as simple as a shock. Their worldview will probably be turned upside down. Through the conversation between the two visitors, Chen Ge knew that this was the scenario that he was looking for. He no longer needed a tour guide. When Foul Odor's red specter arrived, accompanied by two red specters, Chen Ge pushed open the door to the side hall. At that moment, the bespectacled man was squatting next to the wall. The youngest boy was standing on his shoulder. He seemed to be preparing to jump over the wall through the gap between the roof and the wall. The two maintained this posture when they saw Chen Ge walk in. Then, they saw the headless woman and the fat Foul Odor. Bang! The bespectacled man tossed the young boy down. Chen Ge ignored them. He raised the saw and swung it at the wooden door that was locked. It felt like he was being chased. The door opened, and Chen Ge ran out. The bespectacled man and the young boy were lying on the ground, staring at the two red specters silently. Chen Ge ignored the screams behind him. After he ran out of the courtyard, the first thing he did was place the saw before him and lean against the wall. After ensuring that he would not be attacked, Chen Ge used his yin-yang vision to observe his surroundings. The red specter was surrounded by Shu Yin in the red high heels. Her breathing was weak, and she was already at a disadvantage. Facing the attacks, she refused to dodge and fought them head-on. She seems to be guarding something. From another angle, Chen Ge noticed that there was an altar behind the red specter. The altar looked similar to the altar in the cursed house, but the difference was that inside the altar was a clay statue with a severed head. The clay statue was covered in black and red blood, but the key point was that the name, Chen Ge, was written on the statue. Why is my name on that? Before Chen Ge recovered from the shock, his heart started to race, and the shape of the shadow behind him started to change. There seemed to be a voice inside his mind telling him to get closer to the altar and take away the clay statue. Is that a curse? Anyone who saw a statue with their name on it being decapitated would feel terrible. Chen Ge was no exception, but he did not act rashly. When the headless woman and Foul Odor arrived, the four red specters surrounded the costume, and Chen Ge walked forward. Is the altar your possession? Seeing that the red specter did not answer, Chen Ge took another step forward. Originally, this had nothing to do with me, but the statuette inside the altar has my name on it. Someone is after me, so I have to get to the bottom of this. The costume seemed to understand what Chen Ge was saying. She shook her head like she was trying to say that the altar and the statuette inside it had nothing to do with Chen Ge. The statuette has the name Chen Ge on it, so my name is Chen Ge. Chen Ge put down the electric saw. You can't fight four red specters alone, and I don't want to hurt you. Move aside. Under the pressure of the four red specters, the costume finally moved to the side and stopped blocking them. Shu Yin, give me the statuette and the head. The altar was the biggest secret of this reincarnation haunted house. Chen Ge was afraid that there was a trap, so he did not go to retrieve it himself. The pale hands reached into the altar, and Shu Yin grabbed the statuette's body. At the same time, all the death characters on the altar started to leak blood. Blood lines stuck to the statuette like they were trying to bind it to the altar. Go help. The headless woman and Shu Yin had to work together to remove the statuette. The statuette was very normal. It looked like it was made by a child using mud from the river. It barely had the shape of a human. Let me take a look. Chen Ge reached out to grab the statuette, but Shu Yin moved away. He pointed at the black blood stains on the statuette and shook his head lightly like the blood stains would cause great damage to Chen Ge. Is there a curse on it? Take it and let me have a good look at it. Chen Ge moved closer to Xu Yin. As he got closer, he could clearly see that other than the two words, Chen Ge, there were countless, death, characters on the clay statue. However, those, death, characters were very small and were carved all over the statue. Just looking at them made one shudder. This one does not look like me. It's covered in the word, death, so it should be the ghost fetus. Chen Ge had no idea why this thing was inside the altar, and he had no idea why the man called Zhang Ju would build such a scenario inside the haunted house, but he knew that Zhang Ya seemed to want this mud statue. Put the clay sculpture on my shadow. Xu Yin did as he was told. After he placed the clay statue on Chen Ge's shadow, the blood stains on the clay statue slowly faded, as if the thing contained in it was absorbed by Chen Ge's shadow. I once found a wooden box inside the Society of Strange Tales. At the time, Zhang Ya was also very concerned about the black blood stains inside the wooden box. The Society of Strange Tales went through a lot of trouble to bring the wooden box out from behind the door. Could this clay statue be something from behind the door as well? Quote. After entering the world behind the door many times, Chen Ge knew very well how difficult it was to bring something from that world out. Therefore, he could not see anything related to the world behind the door in real life. The blood stains on the clay statue slowly disappeared, and the death characters that were carved on the statue slowly tightened. The blood stains appeared to be protecting the clay statue, but now that the blood stains had been absorbed by Chen Ge's shadow, the death characters were like nails piercing into the clay statue. The red specter wanted to stop him, but when she got close to Chen Ge's shadow, she seemed to sense something. Without needing Xu Yin to stop her, she very sensibly retreated back to her original spot. The last bit of blood stains disappeared, and the clay statue crumbled on Chen Ge's shadow. Chen Ge's heartbeat returned to normal, and the voice deep inside his consciousness disappeared. The black blood stains that were carried out from behind the door appear to be very helpful to Zhang Ya. I should pay more attention to them in the future. When the clay statue crumbled, the death characters carved on the inside of the altar slowly returned to normal. The creator of the altar appeared to want the clay statue to absorb something through the altar, but at the same time, he needed to control the clay statue so that it would not go out of control. His idea was good. A normal visitor probably would not come to this place, but he did not expect that on the second day of the opening, he would be welcomed by Chen Ge. If the clay statue is really related to the ghost fetus, this is very serious. Chen Ge picked up the broken clay statue. After the blood stains were gone, it looked like a normal statue. Looks like I need to find that Zhang Ju and ask him about this. They must have a death wish to do something like this in eastern Zhejiang. Putting the statue away, Chen Ge had Xu Yin and the red high heels inspect the altar. After ensuring that there was nothing wrong, they surrounded the red specter. The red specter should know what the truth was, so Chen Ge decided to have a good talk with her. Did they manage to get hold of something that they can use against you? Or did this altar originally belong to you, and they forcibly took it over? Quote. Hearing what Chen Ge had to say, the red specter shook her head and nodded. She seemed to be very afraid. She kept looking at the altar like it represented something very scary to her. My time is limited. Looks like I'll have to ask you to come back with me. With the persuasion of the 4 red specters, the red specter was finally sent into the comic. You will like your new home. Chen Ge walked around the altar and did not find anything wrong with it, so he gave up. He led the 4 red specters into the last room of the manor. There was a complete portrait of a specter hanging on the wall of the room, but the specter's body was pieced together. It did not lack any body parts, but it looked very uncoordinated. Below the portrait was an altar table, and there were 9 paper mannequins on the table. 8 of them did not have names, but the first one had 2 words written on it, Zhang Ju. It's this Zhang Ju again. Chen Ge looked at the paper mannequins on the table. If Zhang Ju is really helping the ghost fetus, then does this mean that there are 8 more people like Zhang Ju? Staring at the paper mannequins on the table, Chen Ge soon discovered something else. If the whole altar table was Zhejiang, Then the 9 paper mannequins were placed on the 9 rivers of Zhejiang. Zhejiang used to be called Zhejiang because it was surrounded by 9 large rivers. The older generation often said that this place was the rare 9 dragons playing with pearls feng shui. Zhangju is Zhejiang. Could this man be using a fake name? There was nothing valuable. Chen Ge put away the red specters around him, took the key from the youngest man, and continued to move forward. The actors inside the haunted house seemed to have received some kind of notice. There were no real actors, but there were so many projections. The density had reached a crazy level, and every few steps, he would pass one. The 60-minute visit time was over, but Chen Ge was still wandering around the scenarios. It was not that he did not want to go out, but there were too many scenarios. This was the first time that the central computer had done this. Many scenarios were taken out before they were completed, so there was a certain degree of danger. Chen Ge cleared a few more small scenarios. The haunted house's difficulty had passed its peak, and the number of ghosts had decreased. He estimated that he was about to clear all the scenarios, so he quickly found a secluded spot to remove the killer's costume. Wearing the costume of a haunted house actor was fun, but he could not just walk out like that. Since he had achieved his goal, it was better to keep a low profile. I'm surprised that I'm the only one left inside the haunted house. This is so lonely. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.